So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and YouTube videos and all this other stuff, and I
Mhm.
think that kind of locked down what our podcast is missing.
Mm.
And what we need is just copious amounts of ads. We need sponsored ads. We need ad breaks. We need to get to a really critical piece of information. Like, and then the aliens said, but before we tell you what the aliens said, let's talk about BetterHelp. If you're talking to aliens, maybe you need to talk to a therapist as well. It's so frustrating,
That's a
man.
great one.
I cannot stand advertisements, and they've just
Yeah.
invaded everything.
They have. Every single podcast does it now. I mean, I get it, right? They're trying to monetize, but there's not many podcasts out there that are kind of free. Well, I mean, like the Higher Side Chat, he doesn't have any ads, but people pay for premium, right? He's got a base. I don't know what percentage, like maybe 2 or 3% that pay $8 a month, and that's why there's no ads.
It's so
Oh, yeah.
frustrating, man.
It is.
I think even on our YouTube videos, YouTube will slap some ads randomly in there, and it's just like we're not getting money for those. Why?
No.
How
Yeah.
are you allowed to put ads on our videos that we don't get money on?
Right. Yeah, you have to meet the eligibility first, and then they'll share with you. But you're on their platform, so if they want to show ads, they'll show ads. I have premium, so I don't see if we have ads. But you're saying we do?
I think so. I'm not positive, but I mean, I think every YouTube video does. I don't think you can watch a YouTube video without ads these days.
Right. It's in the terms of service. That's what you agree to.
Well, I'm thinking about there's an episode of Futurama where the main character starts seeing ads in his dreams, and I'm like pretty sure that's coming.
Yeah, I mean that's the best, isn't it? That'd be the best place to get someone. If you really want to manipulate them. Oh, I wanted to talk. Did we talk about this? Did I send you this where I was looking at the analytics of our listeners, and I found that high up there is the Netherlands, and then I was clicking into the Netherlands, and then it was this province or area of the Netherlands that has one of the oldest still working planetariums. It's like built in the 1600s or 1700s or something. Really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, so and it's a small town, but so I want to do a shout out, but I completely forgot what
nice.
How it's called. That's a moot, isn't it?
Well, thank you for all of our listeners in the Netherlands. Send us a message. Let us know what the name of that planetarium is. Maybe we'll do a live episode from there and down the road.
Man, that'd be so cool. I looked it up. It's cool. Yeah. Netherlands is awesome. It's a great country. And last week with Jason Verbelli, so we have a bunch of new subscribers from Jason's camp. They enjoyed the interview. That was fun, talking free energy, and especially that guy John Searle. I mean, I'm crazy with the stuff he was doing in the 60s. But yeah, that was a great interview.
So cool, man.
Fun.
I'm really glad. Yeah, it sounded like it was a good time. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it. And like you and I were speaking about before the show, Adam, this is the first time we've recorded together in quite a while.
Yes. So 3 weeks.
Yeah. So the boys are back in town. Well,
hell yeah. And today's subject, I think, is very fitting.
Yeah. Speaking of
get back into it.
Speaking of the 60s, we are covering the original alien abduction case, which has so many working parts to it, so many different organizations involved, including the U.S. government.
Yeah.
You've got a really fun cast of characters. We, of course, well, let me say this first of all. This is the Uncovering Anomalies podcast.
Of course.
Episode 113. And that is I Have a Need to Know, Adam.
What's up, everyone?
And I am Toe for the win. You didn't get that until just now, huh?
Yeah, now I just got it.
And
it's a good one.
Today, we are going to cover Betty and Barney Hill, their abduction case. And oh boy, it's a lot of fun. It is interesting, though, because so this was the original, UFO abduction, the case, the big one.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about is going to sound like, oh, I've heard this before. This sounds really familiar to this case. But you have to remember, this was the first one. Every abduction case that came after you'll see a lot of common themes, but this is where it originally started. And there's a lot of cool moments in here. It sounds like we've got some interviews. We've got to listen to some of their hypnotic regression interviews, and it's pretty spooky stuff, man.
It is really spooky stuff, and like you said, it's familiar because it was the first one, and I guess people say that it was people borrowed from them, right? But it's not. It's just because it's the first one, it has the same signatures as other abductions that came after it, and there's physical evidence. The star map that she made, right? So, she drew. Yeah.
Even though Poopy Pants Carl Sagan said that could have been anything. No, Carl Sagan's good man, but I don't agree with his opinion on this case, so I'm going to call him a Poopy Pants.
Well, apparently he was read in, so and he did once he became on the inside, he started becoming a debunker, or at least was very difficult.
Yeah.
With the subject. So yeah, should we just dive right in?
Well, I'm trying to think of a quick background to this. So Betty and Barney Hill, this happened in 1961, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Betty and Barney Hill were an interracial couple living in, is it New Hampshire?
Yeah, New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. Oh, good. My memory still serves.
Yeah. Nice.
And I bring up the interracial thing because a lot of the debunkers use that. Like one of the big things was they were trying to say, this couple, because they were an interracial couple in a time where it was illegal to be married to someone of a different race.
Yeah. When was the Civil Rights Act?
It was right around. Was this? I can tell you when Betty and Barney Hill were abducted, but I can't tell you when the Civil Rights Act happened. Man,
but it was after their abduction, though. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say 6. I don't know. I'm not even gonna venture a guess because I'll get embarrassed. So, and yeah, I mean, they have missing time. They have, the U.S. government caught something on radar.
1964 was the Civil Rights Act. So yeah,
so I was gonna say 67. So 64. Okay, I wasn't that far off.
So yeah, it was pretty much illegal for them to be married. Well, I don't know, maybe not New Hampshire.
Not New Hampshire. Not New Hampshire. That was one of the reasons they were there.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just let's dive into it. I'll start reading here. Although it wasn't the first case of alien abduction, the encounter of Betty and Barney Hill in September of 1961 on a lonely New Hampshire road is widely regarded to be the first that captured the attention of a nation, and so thrusting the subject of alien abduction into the international spotlight. And although, like every claim of alien abduction, there are skeptics, many consider the account and the Hills themselves to be beyond genuine. That's what I was trying to say. So this was a couple. They're not backwoods hillbillies,
right?
My cousin Randy saw a UFO in his backyard.
No, they were educated, or at least
they were educated. They were smart people. They were, and they were not. They're not excitable. These were not UFO chasers. These were just your regular run-of-the-mill professional couple.
Yep.
Perhaps the fact that they were an interracial couple at a time where, in many parts of the United States, they were still very much resistant to integration and equal rights for Black and minority Americans would suggest they were not looking for unnecessary attention, especially the kind that would paint them in a negative light. In short, they would appear to have very little to gain from the fabrication of such claims. That's a cool photo. That's always how I picture it in my head, the UFO.
Yeah, look at there.
With the fins on the side and the lights. Yeah. Oh, and they had a little dachshund. That's right. I'm trying to remember the name of the dog.
Oh, yeah. The dog was with them.
That's the thing that I never hear about in any of the interviews is I don't know what happened to the dog in this whole thing.
That's weird. I guess it stayed in the car, but dogs do get scared of UFOs, though.
Aliens are out there playing fetch. Go get the ball. Bring it back. Drop it. No, I said drop it. Drop it.
What kind of dog was he? Is that's a hot dog? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not only would the case offer valuable insight into the abduction phenomenon that would unfold over the coming decades, there was also the recollection of star maps by Betty Hill. Star maps that would appear to be accurate and perhaps provide a clue as to where these apparent cosmic visitors are arriving from, or at the very least, where they at one time may have come from. Due to the Hills' openness, The result of a real desire to get to the bottom of the mysterious events, there is a wealth of information on the case, most of which now resides at Betty Hill's alma mater, University of New Hampshire.
Really?
And while they wouldn't seek out publicity from the media, although they would talk about their experiences if approached, they were particularly keen on sharing information with UFO groups and researchers. Again, actions that simply don't point to purposeful deceit.
And this is before MK Ultra, so people can't say. I think it was. People can't say that they were like a plant or some kind of MK Ultra project.
It just doesn't seem like it to me.
Yeah, right.
Do you want to pick it up here?
Yeah, so just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, it was a little after 10:30 p.m. on the evening of the 19th of September, 1961, when husband and wife Barney and Betty Hill were driving back to their home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, from Niagara Falls, where they had enjoyed a vacation. According to Betty, somewhere just south of the town of Lancaster, she noticed a strange point of light moving, first from below the moon and across what was Jupiter in the night sky. Barney, who was driving, continued on along U.S. Route 3, leaving Betty to contemplate this strange aerial glow. She reasoned that it must be a falling star or a comet. However, when it moved vertically and then began to grow larger, she dismissed this notion. She would persuade Barney to bring the vehicle to a stop so she could take a closer look. Bad idea. Realizing that their dog Delcy could likely use a little walk, he stopped the car near a picnic area at the base of Twin Mountain. Of course, Twin Mountain. While Barney walked Delcy, Betty would grab a pair of binoculars from the car. Of course, everyone has one of those, and examine the strange light in front and ahead. She would almost let out a gasp when she witnessed an odd-shaped craft through their magnifying lenses. As this craft passed in front of the moon, she could clearly see different colored lights, each flashing at different times across the exterior of this bizarre vehicle. She would call to her husband and pass the binoculars to him, asking if he thought it was a flying saucer, much like her sister had claimed to see several years previously.
Something that I'm sure we've talked about on the show, but UFO sightings seem to happen in families.
Yeah, yes, yeah, like it's passed down as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know if there's like a base around where they are? I mean, I guess there's bases everywhere.
I don't know. I know there was a radar station because it gets brought up later on.
Oh, okay. Barney looked for several moments. He would insist the object was simply a commercial plane. However, when the craft suddenly changed direction and came towards their location, he would reevaluate this.
Yeah, seriously. I'm thinking about like the drones that people were seeing all over New Jersey. People go, "Oh, that's." Can you imagine? You're looking at it like, "No, come on, that's a plane," and then it just stops and turns and looks at you, and you're just like, "Oh, God.
Oh my God, yeah, run for the hills."
Yeah,
it was a plane that was not a plane. What's more, this object moved with absolute alacrity. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's alacrity, although I don't know what it means.
Yeah, me neither. He would later describe the object as a plane that was not a plane. That sounds exactly like the New Jersey.
Yeah, alacrity. That makes sense. Eagerness, liveliness, enthusiasm.
All right, new word. The Hills, along with their dog, quickly got back inside the car.
Yeah, it's running time.
Yeah, both were now a little unnerved. They would take the car onto a lonely stretch of road toward Franconia Notch. The object continued to follow them, and while still a considerable distance, was getting closer to them by the second. By this time, the object was so close that Betty could see it rotating as it moved. She would estimate it to be around 40 feet in length. On occasion, it would disappear behind the mountain ranges that lined the road before coming back into full view. Why do you gotta play these games? All the while, this strange flashing object wouldn't make a sound. Then, after several minutes, the craft would suddenly descend directly in front of the Hills' car in the middle of the road. Barney would hit the brakes, bringing their vehicle to a stop.
Oof.
Although it was still around 100 feet above the ground, the craft was so large that it filled the pair's field of vision. Even at this close proximity, not a single sound came from the pancake-shaped craft. Checking he had his pistol in his pocket, Barney stepped nervously from the car. Just as cautiously, he began to approach this strange behemoth of an object. Every now and then, he would stop and raise the binoculars to his eyes. he could make out a row of windows along the front of the craft. To his absolute amazement, he could see between 8 and 11 humanoid figures seemingly stood looking outward from these windows.
So,
yeah.
So in the interviews and the things I was listening to, I heard it a little bit differently. Where he was looking through these windows and he saw one sitting at a desk, and the rest of them he kept talking about how they were moving like Nazis and how they were all working on something in there, but they were moving, like in in
Yeah,
unity.
yeah. Oh, together.
Mm-hmm.
Weird. And what they were, it looked like they were working. You said
Yeah.
on something.
Yeah,
Like
except
they're putting on a show.
except one that was sitting on at a desk.
That's
Yeah,
so weird.
and he said every once in a while one would turn around and look at him, but as they were working.
That is so weird.
Yeah.
It just seems like a show.
Mm-hmm.
Then, aside from the one who remained at the glass, the entire group of humanoid figures would move.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. The one who remained at the glass, I'm assuming, is the one who was quote unquote sitting at a desk. The entire group of humanoid figures would move like Nazis
together.
Yeah. They're not human and are going to capture us. Really, really scary, though. I made a joke there, but it is really scary. From Barney's view, there appeared to be a panel at the back of the craft. It was here. Okay, sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit. This is exactly what I was talking about. From Barney's view, there appeared to be a panel at the back of the craft. It was here that all but one lone entity at the window now gathered, as if in some kind of anticipation. This lone entity, dressed like the others in a glossy black uniform, continued to look directly at Barney. Then a voice appeared in his mind. It would state, "Stay where you are and keep looking."
That's not scary.
Yeah, seriously. Suddenly, a burst of activity began to unroll. A large structure began to emerge from the underside of the craft. At the same time, strange red lights, connected to what appeared to be wings, began to leave the huge object and make their way down to the ground where he stood. He would later recall it was at this point that he realized these beings were somehow not human. He would turn and run back toward the car, screaming at Betty as he did so, "They're going to capture us."
Oh, shit.
Yeah, seriously. No, I'd be probably doing the same thing.
He's got his gun.
Mm-hmm. Barney would turn the ignition key and fire the engine into action. As he did so, the object moved directly over their car. Barney pressed down hard on the accelerator and sped away as quickly as he could. Betty would turn around to see if she could observe the frightening object. She would wind down. Is it wind? Is it really how you say that?
Yeah. Wind down. Yeah.
She would wind.
It was manual, right?
Right.
In those days.
I would say rolled. It doesn't matter. She would wind down her passenger window. As soon as she did, both she and Barney could hear bizarre and unnerving beeping and buzzing sounds. A strange sensation ran through each of their bodies while the car appeared to vibrate in sympathy to the strange noises from the outside. Yeah, I remember at one point Betty was saying at that point she had wished she knew Morse code. She thought it was Morse code that was being beeped into the car.
Interesting.
Suddenly, each of them began to feel a strange dullness come over their senses. Their minds and concept of their surroundings were also dulled. They had the feeling they weren't entirely in control. Here's a picture of Betty and Barney Hill. And their dog, look, Delcy, in the photo. Missing miles and missing time.
Yep.
Suddenly, the unsettling beeps and buzzing sounds snapped the Hills back to their senses. Barney's hands were still on the wheel of their car, but they had no idea where they were. They would later discover that they were around 35 miles south of their previous location in the Ashland area. What was even more unnerving, neither of them could recall how they had gotten there. Their last memory they had was of winding down the windows and the strange noises filling their ears. The only solid memory each of them had was of making a sudden turn in the road. There they would encounter a roadblock and a fiery orb in the middle of the road directly in front of them.
So scary, dude.
So we've got missing time, and they also have false memories implanted into them.
Wow.
Very scary stuff. Even more unsettling and confusing to each of them was why by the time they arrived home, it was just after dawn. Yeah, if I remember correctly, they were supposed to get home like at midnight.
Right. Yeah, and they were on the road at 10:30.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a few hours.
Over 2 hours later they arrived home just after it was dawn. Over 2 hours later than that they should have arrived there.
Okay.
Not only could they not then remember over 30 miles of their journey, they couldn't remember a full 2 hours of it. And this was simply the start of bizarre behaviors and memories that would plague the hills over the next 10 days until they finally sought the assistance of UFO investigators.
Now Stephen Greer, because he says all these abductions are CIA and Black Ops. Like, does he think this one is too?
Really good,
probably.
Really good question.
Yeah.
If Stephen Greer hasn't found a way to profit off of this, he has no opinion. So some examples of the weirdness that happened to them. Each of their watches had stopped working. In fact, the watches in question would never work again. Betty's dress was torn, and a strange pink powder was present on it. The leather strap on the binoculars that Barney was using to view the object through was completely torn. He did, however, have no memory of how the damage had happened. He also noticed how the toes of his shoes, his best dress shoes, were scraped significantly. There were, though, even stranger and darker behaviors.
So it sounds kind of violent.
Yeah. What was I? Can you scroll up really quick? I wanted to reread that because something jogged in my memory banks here. I don't remember what it was, but there was other. Like I remember Betty put all the luggage that they used on their trip. She put it like in the back room, away from everything. The dress she was wearing, the pink one that was torn with the powder on it.
Mm-hmm.
She put it in a bag and put it in the back of her closet, away from the rest of her clothes.
Wow.
As if subconsciously she knew it was radioactive or something. Same with the luggage.
And I remember reading somewhere that they had to keep taking showers too. They felt dirty.
Yeah, actually, I just saw it's coming up here in just a second. It's weird because they consciously have no memory of this, but unconsciously they know something happened to them. They know unconsciously they know enough of what happened to them to know that they're radioactive.
Right, like they don't have the details, but they feel something bad happened to them.
Mm-hmm. But it's not. It's more than that. It's not just something bad happened to me. It's something bad happened to me where I know I'm contaminated with something, and my clothes are contaminated, and my luggage is contaminated. So more strange and confusing behavior. Even stranger was the need of each of the hills had to take repeated showers, as if they were contaminated somehow. Barney, although he wouldn't find anything untoward, had the constant urge to check his genitals. He would find stuff later. We'll talk about it. Probably will come up. Betty, meanwhile, was in a constant state of quiet anxiety. She would leave the Hills' luggage packed near the back door of the house. Yep. Well, okay. I got to stop talking ahead of myself. So that, for reasons she didn't understand, if they had to make a quick and sudden getaway, the bags were ready to throw straight in the car outside. Oh, okay, so it was not because she thought they were radioactive. It was for we use them as go bags.
Okay. Makes sense.
The car itself would present further mysteries and questions. On the trunk, for example, there were several concentric circles, each of which shined rather brilliantly. Both Betty and Barney were adamant that they were not there before the strange drive home. Barney would note that when he held a compass close to the strange circles, the needle would spin wildly. As soon as he moved the compass away, the needle settled down to normal. See, I in my research, I heard it was Betty. She had told her sister about this, and her sister asked the sister's neighbor, and the neighbor was a physicist, and the physicist said, hold a compass over the circles in the back of your car, and Betty went out and did that. But,
all right.
Yeah. As the days went on, with the pair increasingly confused and frustrated at the lack of recall of their experience, they would attempt to reconstruct their journey on the night in question. However, as soon as they came to the moment Betty wound down the window and the strange beeps and buzzing noises, each of their memories would suddenly go blank. Try as they might, they simply could not remember what happened next. It was as though a mental block was purposely in place in their minds. It was ultimately because of this apparent mental block that the Hills experienced that they would keep pushing for answers. This would eventually result in revealing hypnotic regression therapy. Woohoo! Perhaps the first in a UFO case.
Exactly.
Now, hypnotic regression therapy, I think, is probably dubious at best.
It comes with a lot of problems, yeah.
But you have to remember, again, this is the 60s. the hypnotic regression, I don't think was, well, it could have been used frequently in therapy, but I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
But certainly the first in a UFO case. I don't know what the 60s scientific field, how dubious they considered hypnotic regression therapy.
Probably not too much back then, right? Because there wasn't enough cases.
Right. Well, I just mean in general, not for UFOs. I just mean in general.
Yeah. Initial reports to the military. By 21st September, 2 days after the sighting, Betty would make contact with nearby Peace Air Force Base. Okay, so there was one nearby. Although she wished to report the incident, she feared she would be mocked or labeled crazy. Because of this, she would initially withhold certain details. However, the following day, Major Paul Henderson would contact the Hills and arrange for a more detailed account. By 26 September, their findings were that the Hills had likely misidentified the planet Jupiter.
Yeah, when you're stargazing and you identify Jupiter and then it comes down and lands on the road in front of you, I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, it starts doing beeping noises and buzzing sounds, and telling you to keep looking with the voices in your head.
I'll never forget, we just flew to Costa Rica, and I was telling my friends and family how I got on this, or I was telling my friends, because I was with my family, how I got on this plane, and they're like, no, that wasn't a plane, that was the moon. You just misidentified the moon when you got on that plane. I was like, oh man, well, screw me, I guess.
The Air Force. I've been re-listening to Behind the Flying Saucers by Scully. Scully? In the 50s, and he was just talking so much smack about the Air Force and the government people and their lies. So we've been dealing with this forever.
Yeah, this is literally the first abduction case, and you already have people going like, you probably misidentified Jupiter.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
So there's precedent there. So every time someone goes, oh, that's probably just the moon, just know, people, that this has been going on since the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Over the years, as numerous UFO investigations would proceed and conclude widely the authenticity of the Hills account, the military would change the misidentified objects several times. Perhaps the most telling of these was the conclusion of insufficient data. Oh, we've heard that one. That's Arrow right there.
Yep.
The initial report, though, would eventually find its way to the military's UFO research group, Project Blue Book. On the same date that Henderson would release his conclusions to the Hills incident, Betty Hill, after reading a book on the UFO subject by him, would contact Major Donald Kehoe. She would relate the incident in as much detail as her memory allowed. She would also state...
Hold on really quick. This is so 60s. Like, you could just call up a major.
People wrote letters too all the time, right?
Yeah, like, you can't do that today. Like, go ahead, folks, at home. Go call up a military base. Go, hey, can I speak to the man in charge there and see how far you get?
They'll laugh their asses off.
Yeah.
She would also state that both she and her husband, in their desperation to recall just what had happened to them, were considering undergoing hypnotic regression. This letter would eventually arrive with UFO researcher Walter Webb. Webb would arrange to meet Betty and Barney Hill. The meeting took place on 21st October. All right, so that's only a month after, around a month following the encounter. The interview would last 6 hours. Like the Hills, Webb would state his belief that a purposeful mental block was preventing them from recalling the encounter in full. Although there was still much to reveal, it was Webb's belief that Betty and Barney Hill were, quote, telling the truth, and the incident probably occurred exactly as reported.
See, and this is when the government was like willing to work with its citizens. These are military, The other thing I wanted to point out, maybe it gets touched on later, is what the aliens looked like. They didn't look like grays. They looked almost human, but not human enough. Because Barney was
right. Were they smaller or no?
Smaller, and they had, like, I think Barney said they had big noses. Like they had human features. They were just wrong. That's what scared Barney so much, is that's why earlier we talked about it. They're almost human, but they're not human. Or I can't remember what the exact words he said was, but they didn't look like the stereotypical grays that we see and talk about now. They looked like just weird humans. But yes, they were short. But again,
But they were looking for genetic material from them, right?
Yeah. Well, that'll get
yeah.
We'll, I'm
I
sure
mean,
that.
could it be like future humans coming back for genetic material? Um,
That's always the argument to be made about grays, right? But
yeah,
again, it's
yeah,
the same. It's the same thing. I mean, why do it this way? Makes no
right.
sense. Um, but again, if you look at people who claim to see aliens throughout the decades, it's grown. Now we have the grays, but it did
Yeah,
start out as weird looking humans.
humanoids. Yeah.
Either people who had claimed to see aliens in the 60s and I think even into the 70s always talked about how they look
Hmm.
it looked like the aliens were trying to be human, but clearly they were doing a really bad job at it.
Right. Yeah.
They were like Picassos, but with human faces.
Right. Yeah, and most of the interactions were with humanoids.
Mhm.
Just a little off, but they looked a lot like us.
Yeah, and now we've got just weird little amorphous gray, aliens with big eyes, and
Yeah,
everyone.
it seems like especially like from the 80s onwards, it's been those
Mhm.
mostly, right?
Yeah, and of course you got your reptilians in there. You've got your
Right.
Nordics,
Yeah, yeah.
but again, like that's the thing is that the Nordics look almost identical to humans,
Hmm.
except
Hmm.
they're tall.
Right.
These ones were short and had big noses or something. I can't remember the exact description he gave.
So intense, frightening, and revealing dreams. All right. So around 10 days after the encounter, and still several weeks before the Hills meeting with Webb, Betty began to experience intense and frightening dreams. What is particularly bizarre about them, aside from their surreal and intense nature, was that they would continue for 5 straight nights before suddenly stopping again. She would never experience them again. Might this suggest some type of outside control and the planting of such dreams? Or might it simply be that once the subconscious mind had sorted through such bizarre memories, it would lock them away for good?
And something that again, I don't maybe it's covered later is the dreams weren't in sequence. They weren't in order. She had to put them in order herself.
Damn. In the dreams, she and Barney would be walking through a forest somewhere near the now abandoned car. She was in front of Barney. She was in front and Barney behind her. Each had one of the strange entities on either side of them. Each of these entities wore shiny dark uniforms and similar colored caps. They were, much as Barney had described seeing through the binoculars, they were shorter they were shorter than she and Barney, around 5 feet high. Their skin, though, was a strange gray color, and their eyes extremely dark. She would often recall walking up a large ramp that extended from a huge disc shaped object which towered over them. She and Barney would be separated. Bizarrely, a figure Betty would often refer to as the leader would inform her that to keep them together would take longer to perform the examinations. She would recall walking around the room. At one point, she would pick up a book that had strange symbols on its pages. Upon her asking, the leader would also produce a detailed star map showing where they came from. Then there was a disagreement. The Hills were taken back to their car. According to the leader, the other men wished them not to remember the incident.
They skipped a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, maybe they'll get to them.
Yeah. If not, I've got cool stuff in my
Okay.
memory banks.
Okay.
Finding a place within the UFO community. Oh man, sorry. Although the eventual hypnotic regression sessions were still several years away, Betty in particular would suffer persistent ailments, moments of anxiety that would spring from nowhere, as well as a feeling of alertness that would force her to keep the packed bags by the door of their home. Both Betty and Barney Hill would take regular drives to the location where they first witnessed the strange craft. Oh yeah, return to the scene of the crime. They hoped such night
I would.
visits They hoped such visits might unlock their memories. In November of 1962, over a year after the encounter, the Hills would meet Captain Ben Sweat, who had talked of hypnosis at the Hills local church. They would speak with him of their encounter and asked whether hypnosis might be able to unlock their apparent hidden memories. Although he agreed that it might, Sweat would state he was unqualified to perform such hypnosis on them. He would also warn against using charlatans or amateurs.
Right.
He would, however, remain close to the Hills over the coming years. Sweat would prove to be quite a key figure in the setting up of the eventual hypnosis sessions of the Hills. They went to what's it called, a utilitarian church? Is that what it's
Oh
called?
yeah. Uh-huh. When it's yeah, utilitarian where Yeah, I know that
And
one.
they have like guest speakers. That's where the sweat guy would come in.
And he's a captain.
Yeah. I don't know much about the totalitarian church, so I don't know how it works, but apparently
they don't believe in Jesus's divinity, but they believe in Jesus and the Bible and the teachings, just not his divinity.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
While Betty was eager to go ahead with hypnotic regression, Barney wasn't as certain. He did, though, believe it would help his wife. It would seem she was struggling with much more than he to adjust to the bizarre and life-changing experience. In fact, he would initially put little credence in her dreams. So, okay, this is a complete hypothesis. I could be way off base here. I think Barney was probably going through something very similar to Betty, but because he is a black man married to a white woman in a time where that's not okay typically, he needs to come off and appear as completely normal and not offensive at all, right? And so he understands that he has to bury this for himself. He can't. He's going to be there and support his wife, and even though he went through the same thing, he can't talk about it, tell anyone, because he's a black man in the 60s.
Right.
If he starts talking about this, he comes off as crazy, and they'll arrest him or throw him in the loony bin, because again, he is black. That's complete hypothesis. But after listening to all this stuff, listening to the podcasts and the interviews, he is extremely hesitant to dive headfirst into this like Betty is. But I don't think it's his lack of interest or wanting to do it. I think it's him just trying to appear as normal as possible.
Right. Yeah.
That's again hypothesis. I could be off base. Maybe he truly didn't care about this as much as she did, but I think
I like it. I think you're right. It makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Around this time, in the second half of 1963, Betty and Barney Hill would make several talks regarding their encounter at the local UFO groups and gatherings. Oh, that's cool. By December 1963, they would meet with Benjamin Simon. After several initial meetings on the 4th of January 1964, the first of the regression sessions would begin.
Really? So 3 years after.
June of that year. And here's the star map that Betty drew.
That's the one she drew.
That's the one she drew. That's what
So it's showing Zeta 2 reticuli, Zeta 1 reticuli, and then she has them go. Look at that. How accurate it is. And she drew it here.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Very crazy.
It's almost exact. And I mean, good that she has great memory like this.
Yeah, I mean, but it's interesting on the map that she was shown, if we can assume that, the one she is drawn there at the bottom, they've got different, lines. Like they've got a hard line between Zeta 1 and 2 reticuli, dotted lines off to the left over there. And so that on the map they're showing, you have to wonder what the aliens mean by that.
Right.
So is that maybe that's a for sure pathway to those stars, and maybe the dotted ones are ones they're still exploring. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Very cool.
Crazy. And Zeta Reticuli is pretty far, right? I think it's 11 million light years. I mean,
I wouldn't even hazard a guess, but again, Zeta Reticuli, probably a lot of you are like, oh, we've heard that before, and we have. A lot of people who are abducted say that the aliens claim that that's where they're from, and
Bob Lazar too.
This is not, again, this is the first time someone's coming out and talking about this.
It's 40 light years away.
Oh, we could do that in an afternoon. We'll do a live episode from there.
40 years at the speed of light.
I can't even imagine. You have to wormhole that, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to pick up, or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, so the hypnotic regression sessions. So here we go. Simon would perform all of the hypnotic sessions on the Hills privately and separately so as to not influence the other. Good. Although Barney was initially nonchalant about the sessions and the encounter in general, Simon would suspect that this outward attitude masked a deep concern that he felt underneath. With this in mind, he would regress Barney first. The results were immediate. When recalling the strange entities through the binoculars and of them looking back at him, genuine fear and terror broke out in Barney.
I hope you've got one of those queued up, because it is really horrifying to hear Barney. So. Yeah. He's talking normal, and he gets a little bit slower, and then he starts screaming. It's really, really scary to listen to.
He would recall that he was so terrified during the encounter that he had kept his eyes tight shut throughout much of it. Poor guy.
Yeah.
He had claimed that after turning to run for the car, the strap on the binoculars had snapped as he ripped it from his face. Barney could recall clearly driving away from the bizarre craft and of seeing it in the distance behind them. Then his recall became intriguing and unnerving. For reasons he didn't know, he suddenly had an urge to take the car off the road and take it into the woods and onto a dirt road. He would drive along this quiet track for some time before 6 men appeared in the middle of the road. Before he could bring the car to a stop, though, it stalled and came to a stop just in front of the group. 3 of the men approached the car. In his mind, he could recall a voice telling him not to fear them. The leader of the men would tell Barney to close his eyes. While he did this, he would recall that I felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes.
Yeah, that's very, very scary. I mean, I can. Oh God, I can imagine it. I'm assuming a hypnotic effect by the aliens.
Yeah, he would claim the stare from the men had a mesmerizing effect.
Oh man, yeah.
Those eyes, they're in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
As a testament to just how frightening Barney would find the strange eyes these equally strange men had on their face, throughout the hypnosis sessions, whenever the issue would come up, he would cry things such as, "Those eyes, they're in my brain," and "All I see are those eyes, they're just there." Perhaps most unnerving, they're just close up, pressing against my eyes. Could you imagine they're just having their eyes touching his eyes?
Well, for me, eyes are the scariest part of a person, honestly.
Yeah, right, yeah. Like had taken place in Betty's dreams, he and Betty were led up a large walkway that extended from the huge disc-shaped craft. Once on board would come their separation. At this stage, while laying on an examination table, Barney would keep his eyes mostly tightly shut. Consequently, he would take in a lot less detail than his wife. He would recall that a cup-like device was placed over his genitals, which would retrieve a sperm sample. He would also feel skin scraped from his arms while they would peer intently into his ears and mouth. One particularly interesting detail was the feeling that someone was working their hands over his spine. He got the impression that they were counting the vertebrae.
Yeah. All the taking the sperm stuff again. It sounds stereotypical, but you have to remember this is the first time this has come up.
Right. Another similar detail to Betty, he would claim their language to be nothing more than strange mumbles. However, at the same time, he could understand them in English when the language was directed at him. Both of them would also recall that the mouths of the entities appeared not to move. Barney specifically would describe their method of communication as quote unquote thought transference.
Mm-hmm.
This is a minor but perhaps important detail. It is thought that this phrase was used as the idea of telepathy, and what it was unknown to Barney. In short, it is perhaps a detail that lends the account towards credibility. You can watch the Barney Hill regressions below.
And please do, but have a clean pair of pants on and make sure you're not in a dark room.
I think this one's not clear. I have one.
If you got one lined up, let's listen to that instead. We'll come back to these.
Okay.
Oh, look at Del C.
So this one, that's the interview. So here's the full Betty. Here's the full tapes, hypnosis tapes. They're an hour and 40 minutes though. So let's see. Yeah, this audio is much better than the other one. The cat door. You're Barney, right? Not Betty.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll take anything at this point.
And there's not a very big bed. And there's 1, 2, 3 next to me. And then there's 2 beds behind us.
I didn't hear that.
2 men man. There's a car door, and there's 1, 2, 3 men, and then there's 1, 2 more behind them.
Yes.
And one man puts his hand out.
Actually, if you could try and find something from Barney, that'd be great. I wish.
So I didn't speak.
Yeah, I wish there's chapters here, but
Yeah. Because I really want to hear when he's talking about the eyes. That part is really freaky.
And he laughed.
There's a first report on some research work.
You find anything after you?
And then we thought, well, we should check and ER. Now, I dreamed in my...
Anything else?
And this...
maybe this one has Barney.
You go deeper and deeper, deeper asleep. Far asleep. Deeper and deeper. Fully relaxed, all must be. And walk her around the trunk of the car.
There we go. This is Barney.
And I'm saying, hurry up, Betty, so I can get a look.
Have you noticed he sounds white, right?
Well, this goes into the whole being black in the 60s and trying to appear as normal as possible.
Right, exactly.
And Betty passes the binoculars to me. And I see that this is not a satellite. It is an airplane. It is an airplane you can see. I think you can see the rows of windows. And it is an airplane. And I tell Betty this.
Zoom ahead maybe like 30 seconds or so.
Back to her. I believe Betty is trying to make me think this is a flying saucer.
Here, let's try that.
I want to hear it. Barren hostility. What is this place? What an area. What is this place? It is right over my right. God. What is it? And I try to maintain control so Betty cannot tell I am scared. God, I'm scared. It's all right. You can go right on, experience it. It will not hurt you now. I got to get my gun. Oh! I got my gun! All right. All right, that's all. I gotta get my gun! Go to sleep, Steve. You forget now. Oh, you forget it now. You've forgotten. Calm now. Relax. Deeply relaxed.
That's probably good.
I want to see when he gets on the UFO.
Okay.
On the craft.
You can see it tilted toward me. Tilted? What does it look like now when you say tilted? Did you see wings? Or then it would have been one solid window. And the evil face on the...
He said evil face.
He looks like a German Nazi. He is a Nazi. Did he have on a uniform? Yes. What kind of uniform? It was black. He had a black scarf around his neck, dangling over his left shoulder. You pointed it out as if it were on you. I never noticed that before. He had a black scarf on his neck. How could you see these figures so clearly at that distance? I was looking at him with binoculars.
Oh, wait, he's not in there yet.
Oh! No, he didn't. There, yeah. Just stay there, he's saying to me. All right. I'll dig in my head. Just pull the binoculars away. God, give me strength. All right. Pull him down. Run! Pull his binoculars down and run. God! It says, my God, give me strength. I gotta get away. Oh! Betty! All right. You gotta get away, Betty! All right. Calm down. I'm driving. I gotta get away. How could you be sure he was telling you this? Calm down. You're still asleep. How could you be sure he was telling you this? His eyes. I've never seen his eyes before. But you said they were friendly. You said they were friendly. No. Not the leaders. I said only the one looking over his shoulder. Oh, I see. The leader was friendly. How did you know the other one was the leader? Because everybody moved. Everyone was standing there looking at me. But everybody moved to these levers or in the back, or they went to this big board. It looked like a board. And only this one with the black shiny jacket and the scarf stayed at the window.
All right, so he's still not on the craft. So he said they look like Nazis, huh? Even like black leather jackets.
Yeah, Hugo Boss, baby.
With a scarf too. That is so bizarre, man.
But I mean, hopefully we didn't scare our listeners too bad. I mean, you can tell how much distress he's in.
Yeah, especially that he was the one who was, like he said, like nonchalant and it's because he had a very terrifying experience. He didn't want to relive it, you know, and didn't want to seem crazy. But he was obviously very emotional.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
And where's the dog in all this?
See, that's been my question this whole time.
Yeah, like they didn't bring them up in their interviews, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know, and no one thought to ask.
Weird.
We'll talk to you. The man in the vehicle? No, they're standing in the road.
All right, so
where are
in the
you?
road.
All right, we'll stop there. You'll be calm and relaxed. You will forget everything that we have had this period together until I ask you to recall it again. You will forget everything we have had done until I ask you to recall it again. You may wait now. Coming in here and you asked me to take a slight incline, and my feet are not bumping on the rocks.
He's floating.
That's funny. I thought of my feet bumping on the rocks. And they are going up smoothly. But I'm afraid to open my eyes
There we go.
because I am being told strongly by myself to keep my eyes closed and don't open them. And I don't want to be operated on. You don't want to be operated on. What makes you think of an operation? I don't know. You were thinking about this when you were there on the road? I was thinking about this when I was lying on my stomach. Where were you lying on your stomach? They played it. They took me and carried me up this ramp.
He's still not even in there yet.
To be operated on? Still, I won't be harmed, and it will be over. And am walking, and I am walking, and
All right. All right.
Anyway,
So
hopefully you guys have a gist of what the experience was like from their point of view in the hypnotic regressions.
Yeah. So I what I understood there also, they were carrying him or floating him into the craft because he said his feet were not touching the rocks or hitting the rocks.
Well, and if you remember, he said he was wearing his best dress shoes, and the tops were all scraped up,
all scuffed. Yeah,
as if his feet were dragging behind him.
Yeah. Okay.
Betty's sessions match her dreams. Barney was taken to his car where he watched the ship leave. Many of Betty's regression memories would match her husband's. In fact, many of her revelations would mirror those of her intense dreams from that bizarre 5-day period following the episode. She was, as in her dream, left with the leader of the group. He would inspect under her arm, pointing a large lens at it and taking skin samples. They would also remove samples from her ear, nails, and her hair. She would further recall a long needle being inserted into her navel. The leader would inform her that this was a pregnancy test.
Okay, hell.
Which is kind of a bad idea because if she was pregnant, she wasn't going to be pregnant after that.
Right.
And the leader was surprised at the pain it apparently caused Betty. Apparently, when the leader placed his hand over her eyes, the pain stopped immediately. It was during these episodes in her regression sessions that Betty would become increasingly emotional and upset. During one particular session, she would become so distressed that Simon would end it early and bring her immediately out of hypnosis. Also during Betty's hypnosis sessions, she would recall the star map from her dreams. During her examination, she asked the entity where it came from. It was then that the leader produced a 3-dimensional, likely holographic, star map. According to Betty, the leader would tell her that the 12 glowing dots were stars, and the lines that connected them were routes or directions from the star system to others.
Okay.
While she was under hypnosis, Simon would suggest to Betty that when she came out of the session, she would draw the star map. She would do just that. And to some, it is another key piece of evidence as to the authenticity of the Hills' claims. Before that, though, here's an ad. Before that, though, check out the video of Betty Hill speaking below. We're not going to watch this, are we?
No, we don't have to. The Zeta Reticuli connection and Marjorie Fish. Some researchers speak of the case as a Zeta Reticuli incident, and that is because of the aforementioned star map produced by Betty at the suggestion of Simon. What would prove to be remarkable about Betty's star map is that it would look almost identical to the Zeta Reticuli system. Many UFO researchers state we were unaware of the star system at the time, and the discovery would come from this drawing. Yeah, I think we didn't know it was a double star system or something until later.
Right.
This is not quite true. Okay. Knowledge of the Zeta Reticuli system, or at least its general location, go back to the mid-1750s. and it obviously has always been visible before Betty Hill's sketch. However, that being said, and despite Betty Hill's higher than average education, it is highly unlikely she, as someone with not even a passing interest in astronomy, would have been aware of it. Certainly not in the detail which she would depict it.
Yeah, you have to remember, this is, again, I keep saying this is the 60s. This isn't, you pull up Wikipedia on your phone, or you look at star maps on your phone. If you want to know stars, you have to research it.
Yeah, and go to the library to research it, right? Physically.
I have no idea, would a library even have star maps and stuff like that?
Yeah, they had everything,
Okay.
if I remember correctly. Yeah, even like old newspapers. And in 1966, following the wide circulation of the sketch and the interrupted journey, school teacher and amateur astronomer Marjorie Fish from Ohio would contact the Hills. It was her belief that the glowing dots that Betty was shown inside the craft on the holographic model might be able to be matched to an actual star system. She would embark on a project that would take 6 years to complete, wow, and result in what is now referred to as the Fish model. Before we look at that, however, the Zeta Reticuli system has come up several times in UFO and even conspiracy reports, perhaps the most notably the Serpo project.
Yeah,
an apparent exchange program between the human and an alien race. As a side note, some claim that the reptilians come from this system. Might that be why the word Serpo, serpent, mass, the Fish model? So it took her 6 years. That's nuts, man. That's a lot of dedication on her. In 1972, 3 years after the unfortunate death of Barney Hill, and representing 6 years of work, Marjorie Fish would produce what is now referred to as the Fish model. She had produced over 20 three-dimensional models searching the star system's neighboring Earth to a distance of 65 million light years. She would also spend literally hundreds of hours searching and photographing the night skies. From these, she would view various star systems from various angles. Eventually, she would settle on the aforementioned Zeta Reticuli system. Even the most ardent skeptic had to admit the similarities were remarkable. What Fish would find particularly eye-opening was the fact that only this particular star system matched Betty's drawing. By her own admission, she had expected to find several likely candidates. The fact that there was only the one unique match to her suggested Betty and Barney's account, as they told it, was likely accurate and genuine. Even stranger, Fish would suggest that each of the 12 stars were thought to have planets around them that could potentially support life. Furthermore, all such stars in the region thought to contain life-supporting planets were included in the map. If we assume Betty's star map to be accurate, and furthermore, that the Hills' captors were really aliens from the star system, then it would also appear that at least 12 planets exist within the system that potentially support life. Might these planets each harbor life unique to their respective environments? This is Stanton Friedman. This is a good video. It's not that long.
Sweet.
I miss Stanton Friedman.
Despite the fact that Marjorie Fish tried thousands of different combinations of stars to try to match Betty's pattern, she was able to find one and only one pattern that matched angle for angle, line length for line length, what Betty had drawn. The star pattern makes sense from nearest star to nearest star to nearest star. The sun is part of the pattern. Quite remarkably, every one of the stars in the pattern is the right kind for planets and life. And all of the right kind of stars for planets and life in this volume of space are part of the pattern. The chance of that happening by accident, all the right kind and only the right kind for pattern stars, is 1 in several thousand. Perhaps most remarkably, this work tells us where one set of visitors originates. The base stars, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 Reticuli, are a very special pair of stars.
Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 Reticuli are the closest to each other pair of stars suitable for planets and life in our entire neighborhood. Instead of being isolated from their neighbors as we are, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 are 100 times closer to each other than we are to our nearest neighbor. It would not be surprising if space travel developed earlier between such close neighbors. Zeta 1 and 2 Reticuli are over 1 billion years older than Earth, clearly giving any beings living there a long evolutionary head start on us. We went to Ohio State University to get an expert opinion about the validity of Marjorie Fish's star map work. Professor Walter Mitchell has been a professional astronomer for over 20 years.
It took me quite a long time to gain a full appreciation for the work of Marjorie Fish, but it's become apparent over the years that, first of all, the work is, without question, accurate.
The proven validity of her star map enormously increases the credibility of the remainder of Mrs. Hill's story.
I was taken into the first room, Barney into the second room, where we were given, as the leader, as I call him, gave us testing. There were 11 beings, and for purposes of identification, I called one the leader, because he seemed to be in charge of the project of doing this testing, and he was the only one who spoke English. Then there was the examiner who did the testing, and then there were 9 others we called crew members. They stayed outside the room in the corridor. Our examinations were very much similar in that with both Barney and I, they checked our eyes, ears, nose, throat, took samples of our hair, fingernail, and they scraped our skin. With me, they touched my body with little points on wires. They said he was checking my nervous system. And then they attempted to insert a needle-like instrument in my navel. I objected that it would hurt, and he said it shouldn't hurt. When he did this, it caused a great deal of pain. He said it was a pregnancy test, and I said, well, that's no pregnancy test here.
Betty Hill was right. In 1961, there was no pregnancy test like that here on Earth. But in the early 1970s, 2 techniques, amniocentesis and laparoscopy, have both come into wide usage. Both are techniques that provide information about pregnancy and bear a striking resemblance to the experience that Betty Hill described. It's difficult to imagine Betty Hill inventing medical techniques that did not yet exist on Earth unless her UFO experience actually occurred. When the alien leader saw the pain that Betty was experiencing, he put his hand on her head and the pain went away.
At this point, the examiner came running back into the room and opened my mouth and started tugging at my teeth. And I said to the leader, what is he doing? And he said, we're very, very puzzled. Why are Barney's teeth removable and yours are not? At that point, we left the craft and went back to the car, and we stood there by the car and we watched the craft leave. We saw it become surrounded by a fiery, revolving mass of some kind. We could see the UFO in the middle of this. And it lifted up, dipped down, went right straight up, and was gone. I received a copy of the radar report from Pease Air Force Base, where they had tracked an unidentified craft at 2:14 a.m. Just about the time we estimate that the UFO left. We went back and we found the spot where we were captured. It was not a fantasy. It was a real experience. And I believe that I have enough evidence to establish that.
I first met Betty and Barney Hill in November 1968. I've spent a great deal of time since then investigating their abduction. I've talked to Dr. Benjamin Simon about his hypnosis sessions. I've listened to the tapes of those sessions, and I've looked at Marjorie Fish's star map work in great depth. It seems clear to me that Betty and Barney Hill were taken on board a flying saucer in New Hampshire in 1961. His story must be taken at face value. It's true.
Damn.
Cool. Very cool video.
Yeah. I mean, and she's seems so lively, and I mean, I don't want to say she's happy, but she definitely takes it much better than Barney, I would think.
Yeah, definitely.
The aliens looked weird too in that video.
So I think, are we going to start to get into the?
The aliens.
The aliens. So one of the big not faults. One of the things that skeptics use a lot is the aliens that they describe seem to look like the aliens from this show.
Yes, that's what this is. Yeah,
The Outer Limits, that aired just a little while before this. What happened to Betty and Barney Hill.
What was the episode about? Do you know?
I don't know. I'm
Okay,
sure
maybe
it'll get
maybe it
covered
says it
here.
here. Yeah.
There is no doubt, at least to most, that the entities Betty and Barney Hill were describing are what we would now call gray aliens or the Greys. So maybe I was wrong earlier because I thought when Barney was describing them, I thought he said they looked almost human.
Yeah.
Suppose I was a little wrong there.
Well, humanoid.
My brain bank doesn't work sometimes. However, at the time, such a description was not automatic of these alien encounters. Does this then lend another slice of credibility to the Hills account? Some believe it very much does, and we will look at the Greys a little more shortly. However, some skeptics would argue that an episode of The Outer Limits named The Bolero Shield had aired around a fortnight before the Hills' apparent abduction. One of the characters in the episode featured a bald, gray-skinned alien. Many believe this influenced, likely without them even knowing, the eventual perception of whatever they saw that evening in September 1961. You can view a frame below.
So
that's human. That's humanish.
Yeah, the alien creature featured on television only weeks before the apparent abduction.
As we mentioned in the opening, the interracial nature of the Hills relationship in the 50s and 60s is to some an indicator of the genuineness. Why, supporters of this argument ask, would they draw unwanted attention to themselves? Others, though, would state the fact that they were an interracial couple was a major factor in the incident. Thank you. The general argument around this statement was that the couple would suffer a bizarre and unique hallucination due to the pressures of such a relationship in a country that was, in places, still struggling with racial inequality. Betty Hill herself would dismiss this notion. Yeah. She would state the couples received no animosity from their local community or their families. And while northeast of the United States, while the northeast of the United States undoubtedly still had its problems with racism at the time, it was a far world from the deep segregation still prevalent in the American South. Benjamin Simon would also dismiss their interracial marriage was of any consequence to the incident.
So people thought they were hallucinating because they were stressed out about being
so stressed. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone's after us.
Well, I can understand that argument,
and it's alienating, maybe also, right, in that sense. Let me take this. The start of a speculative, fuller picture. While there is no doubt that the Hills would establish the template of alien abduction encounters, this charge at them and encounters that would follow, it is an unfair one at best. For example, there is no doubt that at least a small proportion of the many claims of abductions that would follow over the years would have borrowed from that of the Hills. However, for the vast majority of the more authentic subsequent accounts, the fact they provide the same thing surely adds authenticity. For example, you can only describe what you see and or remember. So if we assume the same extraterrestrial race is behind the surge of abductions since the 1960s onwards, it would make sense that people would describe the same entities, craft, and scenario. Even the alien abduction accounts that are on record, as have happened before the Hills encounter in 1961, the gray aliens only generally appear towards the mid to late 1950s, which we might take to be another indicator of the authenticity of the alleged Eisenhower meeting. Many encounters with apparent aliens prior to this are often of a mutual meeting nature and often involve more humanoid type aliens. Again, going back to the connections to the Eisenhower meeting, there was an apparent other meeting with a different alien race. That's a different thing, though. Alternative explanations don't hold water. Betty Hill would insist that she had not watched the show in question, much less she hadn't even heard of it. And while there is undoubtedly a resemblance, it is hardly a perfect match. It is, though, a reasonable point to raise. Perhaps another point might be where the idea for the original television character came from. Another claim to explain what the Hill had really seen came from New Hampshire resident Jim McDonald. He would retrace the route the Hills had taken and felt sure that what they had actually witnessed was an aircraft warning beacon that resides on the nearby Cannon Mountain. MacDonald would claim that both the angle the Hills would have witnessed the beacon from and the timing of it matched their account exactly. While this might sound reasonable on the surface, it loses a little of its credibility when the rest of the incident, including the alien abduction scenario, is explained as nothing more than sleep deprivation and false memories. While we will look at Simon's conclusions in a moment, to say the Hills were simply mistaken and tired doesn't really hold water. If the account was merely a sighting, then perhaps such an explanation could be accepted more readily. However, such a detailed account, one that would occur repeatedly by people all over the world, would appear to be a little too precise in their shared nature to simply be some type of hallucination due to exhaustion. And while even the most stable of minds is prone to a temporary breakdown in perception, the Hills were both particularly mentally strong people. For them to react in such a way at exactly the same time is surely unlikely, perhaps impossible. Exactly. I mean, they're not gonna have people don't have. There's no like mass hallucinations, or if you do hallucinate together, it's not gonna be the exact same thing.
Right. I hate the term mass hallucination. I don't know if that's ever works.
Yeah.
I know, like mass delusion. I get
or mass hysteria.
Right. I get that.
Yeah.
Mass hallucination though. That's pretty wild.
All right, this goes through Simon's.
Yeah, but I think we're in hour 16. Are we going to do the episode, or do we want to? Are we going to cover other stuff?
We have other ones. There's a. Do you want to? They did older interviews in the 50s as well.
Yeah, we can go through some of those. That'd be great. I was going to say, I think we're done with that article though.
Okay, yeah,
that's all I was trying to say.
Now,
this is one of the first ones. So 1967.
Nice
interview.
Sir and Mrs. Hill, for your story. I believe it began on the night of the 19th of September, 1961, as you were driving home from a vacation in Canada, and something happened near Lancaster, New Hampshire. Which one of you was the first to see this something happen? Betty was the first one.
Yes.
Betty, could you start the story then?
Yes. We were driving along on Route 3. And it was a very clear night, and the moon was very almost full and very bright, and the sky was very clear, and we could see the stars easily. When suddenly, right near the moon, I noticed a new star, which was much larger and brighter than the other stars in the sky. And I called Barney's attention to this. Then suddenly, we noticed it started to move. And it went across the face of the moon. We stopped the car and got out to look at this because we thought it was a satellite. And while we were observing it, it made a turn and started to come in our direction. And at this point, we changed our minds, thinking that it must be a plane. We were driving along, and as it came in closer, I began to realize that it was not a satellite or a plane, that it was something that I had never seen before. Now, this was based on its maneuverability, the way it was flying. It was sort of had a very erratic flight in the sky, and as it came in closer to us, it was sort of riding along on the ridge of the mountains. And then when we got in the area of Indian Head, it suddenly swung out over the highway in front of our car. At this time, I could see a row of windows around the edge and a red light on each side. And it was at this point that Barney stopped the car and he decided to get out to get a good look at it and to identify it.
So I got out of the car and took the pair of binoculars, 7x50 crescent binoculars, and stepped away. And as I raised the binoculars, looking over the roof of the car from my position on the ground, the object shifted across the highway, where it now, in making the shift, it also had a descent motion that brought it to what I roughly estimated as about 100 feet in the air. And then I began walking across the highway into the field. I walked quite a distance in the field, and I saw what I thought were figures standing by this huge plate glass looking back at me. I couldn't believe it. I dashed back to the car screaming to Betty that, oh my gosh, I said, it's going to capture us, is what I said. There was a series of beeps, and then later there was another series of beeps,
Betty asked me if I now believed in flying saucers, and I told her, don't be ridiculous, of course not. We continued then to proceed on to Portsmouth, and we arrived. We both felt very uncomfortable and clean. I don't think I mentioned to Betty how I felt, but I felt clammy, as if I had fallen into something very, very filthy.
What time did you come home? I understand there was a time factor that you were surprised that you had come home so late.
Well, actually, at the time, no, I wasn't surprised that we had arrived home later than really what we would have expected, because we didn't put any particular importance on our arrival time, except that we knew it was around 4:30. We should have arrived home at 4 hours. We arrived home in about 5.5 to 6 hours.
What were these objects on the back of your car that bothered you so much?
Well, when I went out to look at the car, to check it with the compass, as this physicist had suggested, I found some round, highly polished spots on the trunk of the car. When I put the compass near them, it just reacted erratically. And
spun around?
Yes. And then when I moved it away, the compass reacted normally.
We had been asked if others had seen these spots, and there are. There was a sergeant living in our apartment building at the time. He and his wife, they knew we had been on vacation, so they came down, and Betty told them she had gone out, and she was quite upset about what she had seen, and was trying to get me to go out, and I wouldn't, so they went out and took a look, and they came in quite excited, insisting that I go out and look on the trunk of Betty's car. So when I went out, I also, too, saw these large shiny spots. And I didn't put any, well, it wasn't important. They were just shiny spots. I didn't know how they got there, but I didn't try to even understand how they were there.
What next?
During the same period of time, well, about 10 days after the sighting itself, I had a series of dreams that lasted for about 5 nights. And these were somewhat upsetting and puzzling to me. At first, I thought of them only as bad dreams. But then when the scientists noticed that there was this period of time, then I began to wonder if my dreams might have been my way of trying to recall what had happened.
What could you tell us now about what was in those dreams?
Well, the dreams, well, briefly, in my dreams, we were driving along, we were stopped by a group of men on the highway, taken out of the car, taken aboard the UFO, underwent physical examination, and then were released. These were the dreams that I had.
How long after your mysterious experience in Lancaster in the mountains did you go to see Dr. Simon?
Well, this would have been in the latter part of 1963. The sighting was in September 1961. Mm-hmm. And so I was...
More than 2 years.
Yes,
elapsed.
yes.
Revealed to you. What story did you learn about your experience under hypnosis?
Well, there were the beeping sounds, and then I apparently went into some kind of a daze, some kind of condition like this. And we're driving along, and Barney suddenly made a sharp left-hand turn off the highway, and we went around a curve, and there was a group of men standing in the highway. And under hypnosis, my first thought was, there must be an automobile accident. And then the car motor died, and Barney was trying to start the car, and he wasn't able to. And these men were coming closer, and they divided. And at this moment, I panicked. I became very frightened. I tried to open the car door, thinking I would get out, run and hide in the woods until they were gone. Just as I opened the door, they stepped over where I was.
Could you remember under hypnosis what these men looked like?
Not at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, go ahead.
Then they took me out of the car, and I went into sort of another deeper daze of some sort.
Kind of a trance.
Yes. And then I was more or less pulled myself out of this, or at least partially. And I found myself walking in the woods with a man on each side of me, and some in front, some behind me. And then in back of me was Barney, and he was like sleepwalking. And there were these 2 men more or less holding him up. We walked through this long path in the woods until we came to the craft that was sitting on the ground. We went up the ramp, And
I might add, ramp was never mentioned in Betty's dreams, but both seemed to share the idea that we had been going up a ramp.
It was not in Betty's dreams,
No.
but it was the word that came out on hypnosis.
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
yes, so we went up ramp into this corridor that curved. And they took me into the first room, and they took Barney into the second room. And while I was in there, they did what we call a fairly simple physical examination.
Could you describe it?
The first thing they did was they examined my arm. Apparently, they were looking at my skin, and they seemed to be making a lot of comments among themselves, as if they were quite excited about this. And they brought over what I called, I've never seen one, so I don't know, but I call it a microscope with a camera attached. Then after that, they took hair samples on my fingernails. They checked my eyes, hair, my ears, nose, and things like this. And they looked over my hands and my feet, particularly my feet, quite thoroughly. Then they said they were going to test my nervous system. And they brought over some kind of a machine, which they touched.
Were you fully dressed?
No. They took off my dress and my shoes. And then during this, what they call the checking of my nervous system, I had a slip on, and they pulled my slip up and did this testing. And then the next one was the examiner had a needle, and I became aware that he was going to
Jab you?
yes, I didn't know if it was an injection or what it was. And I begged them not to use the needle because it would hurt. And he started to insert it into my navel.
A long needle?
It was a long needle. I don't know how.
This long?
It was, I think under hypnosis, I said 4 to 6 inches.
Mm-hmm.
But I became badly frightened when I saw the needle. And then when I found they were trying to put it into my navel, I became very frightened, and I begged them not to do it. And the leader said it wouldn't hurt, and they started to put it in, and it did.
Why were they doing it?
Well, he said it was a pregnancy test, and I said, well, it was no pregnancy test here. And when they seemed to be very surprised that I had any pain from this. And the leader put his hand out over my eyes, and the pain went away, but they stopped the test.
There was one man whom you called the leader?
There was one I called the leader and one I called the examiner.
What language did you speak to them in?
I spoke in English, and I don't know what language they spoke in, but I understood them in English.
By word or sound or thought transference? Or...
I don't know.
You don't know?
No, but under hypnosis, it seemed to me I actually heard sounds.
Now,
although I cannot say it was English.
What happened when the examination was finished?
Well, then I was standing there waiting to go back to the car, because all during this time they reassured us that as soon as the tests were over with, we'd go back to the car. And so I was standing there waiting, and they said that Barney's examination was taking longer, and that I would have to wait for him. And then there was all this excitement, and this man came into the room and started tugging at my teeth. And I questioned them about this, and this is when they showed their surprise that Barney's teeth were removable and mine were not.
What were your experiences while Betty was in the room being examined by these man-like beings?
And I'd like to emphasize before I go into that is that this was brought out under hypnosis because I am still a bit reluctant in this area.
And I think it is important to reemphasize that the story you've just told is one that you were not consciously aware of,
Never had.
but which was drawn out of you by your psychiatrist, Dr. Ben Simon,
Yes, that's
under hypnosis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it seemed as if I was carried up the ramp. My feet were banging against the ground as these small men I described came up to me and carried me from the car and through the woods and up this ramp and into this room where I opened my eyes. I saw a table. Betty described the table as being adequate for her to lie on, the room where she was in. And at this time, I do not know where Betty is. And apparently, I am more concerned for my own welfare to be concerned about Betty. But the table that I described was small, and obviously the difference in our heights could be the answer.
Well, how tall were these men?
I estimate, I said they were about as tall as Betty, but this would mean that they
What
were
are you, 5'1"?
about 4.5 to 5 feet.
I'm 5 feet.
5 feet.
Yes, and I'm 5 feet 8. So that the 3 inches difference was quite a difference. And I said that the table was too small. Where I too was given an examination, I'm very conscious about my teeth. I was very upset about. I only got as far as saying something went into my mouth, and I did not bother to tell the doctor, and he did not press this as to what was happening. But I can only think now that this would have been when my teeth would have been extracted and
Pulled out.
Pulled out. Yeah, I should have said pulled out because they're dentures. Yes, and so they weren't extracted. They had been. But I go on to explain that the kind of examination that I had been given is a scraping of the skin, and I had been turned over. They were interested in body openings, and a cup-like object was placed against my genitals. And I was reluctant to talk about that until Mr. Fuller was able to word it for me by saying lower abdomen. And this would have been the extent of the examination.
What do you believe now, Bunny?
All right, ask Betty first.
All right, Betty.
I believe we were really captured. I mean, if we were not captured, there was no face to the problem of what happened during these 2 hours of amnesia.
Well, this is what I'm forced, in a sense, to believe that something happened that night. I can't say definite as to what definitely happened, but apparently if the hypnosis which we were led to believe would be the means of opening up the amnesia, if this is not the facts, then what are the facts?
Yeah, good point. Wow, man. That was a great interview.
It was. I'm glad we got to hear some more details from, the mouths of the actual people who were involved.
Yeah. Wow. So what do you I mean, obviously something happened to them. I know even Barney has an issue with the hypnosis thing. He's like, if that didn't happen, then what did exactly?
Yeah. Well, when people talk about hypnosis and they say it's not the truth, it's not necessarily the truth, but it's what the person believes happened to them, which is if they believe that happened to them, I mean, that's enough, proof for me in my book.
Yeah, and just listening to the hypnosis, like he's not really feeding them anything. You know what I mean? So he's not planting any memories. He's not leading them on. All right, so did you see this or did he say that? Like he doesn't say any of that, at least from what I heard. So
and we listened to the actual hypnosis tapes earlier in the show, and I mean it's horrifying to listen to.
Yeah.
You can tell they're traumatized.
Yeah, they're definitely traumatized. Wow, so scary. Wonder why it was them. Probably just they were in the bad place at a bad time, right? I mean, the middle.
Opportunity. I think it was just the opportunity. I mean, the aliens saw that they were being watched by this lone couple on a lonely road in the middle of nowhere, and they go, "Well, let's check these guys out."
Yeah, and what are they so excited about? She's like, they were all excited about. I mean, if they were all the same species, and I've heard this brought up before, if they were all the same species, wouldn't the test have to be just once? They don't have to do it constantly. So these must be different civilizations doing this.
Or what if Earth is just this like zoo, like a petting zoo?
Yeah,
but we've got the groundskeepers who live in the ocean. We've got all these aliens from different stars that come and poke and prod at us.
Yeah. What a case, man!
What a case! It's the original. It's one of my favorites. It's got a little bit of everything.
Yes, it does. We can move on with some UFO UAP updates. Or
awesome.
This is a great interview. This guy, what is his name again? It's not on here, but he's a Australian intelligence guy, and he looked at the JFK files. And I just want to play a clip here of what he found, because he links the JFK files and to MJ12. Yeah, and it's really cool. I mean, I want to reach out to him and say, where does he? Because you'll hear some of these conclusions. I'm like, where does he get that from? Because I tried researching it and looking for what he said online. There's nothing to this, but it's basically the JFK files that were released. James Jesus Angleton basically had his own CIA office which was secret, and a lot of it had to do with Israel and helping them with their nukes and stuff like. Yeah, really weird. So those documents came out with these JFK file dumps.
Nice.
So let's see what he has to say. Really weird stuff.
And the name Majestic 12, was symbolic in that these people thought that they were analogous to the 12 apostles, and they were trying to re-establish the state of Israel because of what they found in the Magenta crash in 1933, the Cape Girardeau one in 1941, and Roswell, and particularly one in 1948 called the Aztec crash, where apparently a library book was found that Robert Oppenheimer decrypted that sort of said, we need to re-establish the third temple, and that would sort of lead, to a period of messianic universal peace once that established. And the three Abrahamic religions all talk about this, and I believe that's what MJ12 thought they were trying to do as a deep state, without telling the people. Gradually move towards that.
It's not nuts what he said. He said what they found in the crashes in Magenta. I don't know what the other one he said, Roswell. But then in the Aztec crash, there was an encyclopedia that Oppenheimer, or some kind of book that Oppenheimer decrypted, and it's talked about the third temple. So MJ12's mission was to hide this knowledge, but to go ahead and that's why Israel was established in 1948. So a year after, these crashes and what they found.
Crazy stuff.
Isn't that nuts? And now third temple. That's what we're seeing now. I mean, and that's it. Kind of explains this mysterious relationship we have with that country, and that it doesn't matter what happens or how we need to do it. We need to just go there and then build the third temple, which is exactly what's happening.
Yep, man, crazy.
Yeah, and how UFOs are linked to that. Of course, UFOs are linked to that, but I mean, so they know something that goes much deeper. And they're linking UFOs to the Abrahamic religions.
Well, maybe that's why they're so obsessed with kicking everybody else out.
Yes, exactly, and they want it. So there's something. And then I don't know if we talked about this, but there was researchers said that. Oh yeah, it was on Redacted that the Ark of the Covenant is under the Temple Mount, or the Dome of the Rock.
Oh,
and that's why they want to take it. Interesting.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
all the pieces are there. It's all adding up.
Yeah. So this is a great interview. I definitely recommend watching the whole thing. Jake Barber was also on.
Russ Coldheart knows how to get good interviews.
He does, and he asks such good questions. So here he basically brings up to them, because before in the interview they went through all their protocols. This is Skywatcher, Jake Barber and Skywatcher, and they went through like all their protocols they are doing to prove this once and for all scientifically. So Ross asks them, he's like, guys, if you guys really pull this off, it's not a joke. And I love Jake's answer here.
Gentlemen, I want to put this in its context. If you pull this off, this is a scientific exploration achievement that I think overshadows humanity's greatest ever achievements. I mean, this would be one of the defining moments in human history, wouldn't it?
That's a heavy thing to take to heart, but I agree with you. But I just would say that part of why I think we are able to make the progress we have and are going to make is being done on the backs and shoulders of people that have created technology and educational references for us to even do this type of experimentation to begin with. Like even just the camera technology, radar technology, all the scientists that are coming to help us out are bringing with them things that weren't available even 5-10 years ago. So for us to take credit for that, we're more like my good friend Don Paul says, we're like the reverse prism, if you will, that takes refractive light or takes a light beam and turns it into a rainbow. We're doing the opposite. we're taking all the colors of the rainbow, concentrating them and turning them into a concentrated beam of light. And I think that's kind of, if we get there, we were just the group that came along and was able to take all of these resources and direct them and apply them to this subject and this question and these hypotheses in order to reach that conclusion.
Yeah, Matt, you obviously have a sense of.
I mean, if they really pull this off, and it makes sense that they can now, right? The technologies out there, like the frequency detectors and just the different cameras, and then they have psionics on their team. I wish them all the best.
Yeah,
seriously.
me too. Good
So
Godspeed, guys.
They said by 2025, this year, and the end of 2025, they'll be able to prove, and that'll be huge.
It will absolutely change everything, I hope.
Gary Nolan also said that he was threatened. He works on the Skywatcher team. He was threatened by the White House.
Oh God!
Because he was on some podcast and he said something about a program, and they called him and threatened him.
Why amnesty is required? I mean, I've said this publicly, so I'll say it again here. I was personally threatened because I knew of a conversation that happened somewhere. And I alluded to it in the most elliptical fashion on a public broadcast. Literally a couple of days later, I get a phone call from a friend saying, XYZ at the White House is really pissed at you, and you should not ever say anything like that again because Title 18 applies. I said, what does that mean? Lethal force is operable.
Oh my God.
I put down the phone and I honestly, I nearly broke down in tears, and I called a reporter friend of mine to just basically report it to them, to say, this just happened to me. I was just threatened. Because they knew what I was saying. Nobody else would have known what it was what I was alluding to.
Regardless of whether or not it's aliens, if they think you're disclosing their secure information, you might not.
Well,
be
I
safe.
wasn't supposed to know it because I heard it from a friend who wasn't supposed to tell me.
I mean, if there's nothing there, why?
Right.
Why would they threaten him with his life?
Yeah, that's that's always the question, isn't it? Or is it double counter espionage where threaten this guy, he's gonna think it's real?
Yeah, it's just such a confusing time, and there's so many of these whistleblowers, and still no proof is out yet. Nothing from the Trump administration about UAPs and UFOs. They're busy doing other things.
Yeah, gotta impose a tariff on Antarctica or whatever the hell they're doing.
Man, the tariffs thing is so crazy.
It really is. But we're not a political podcast.
Right. We might mention some things at the end. Kirk McConnell, he worked in government. He's retired now. This is a great interview. But in this part, he talks about in the 60s how we did the nuclear tests in space. So he talks about that incident, how we downed a UFO. Great. It's a great part of the interview.
Cool.
This is so important to this question about, does the government take this matter seriously? And again, we started out talking about the Foo Fighter experience in World War II, but after the war, as soon as the United States started building substantial nuclear forces and facilities, there's just this constant visitation and monitoring by, at the least, by UAP. When you get into the 1960s, there are these amazing events that happen. You mentioned Robert Jacobs, the Big Sur event in 1964. But Dr. Harold Malmgren has alerted the world, as it were, to events that took place in 1962. In fact, some of them at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. This has been documented by, I think, you, as well as Jeff Cruikshank from Australia, and certainly a lot of Reddit users. Harold Malmgren, before he passed away, and what a tragic loss, I might add. He was such an incredible, statesman, diplomat, defense thinker, economist, and so forth. But going back to 1962, he was the youngest of McNamara's whiz kids. He was involved in the day-to-day deliberations about what to do when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. After the Cuban Missile Crisis was over, he was commissioned by McNamara to lead a study of the potential for missile defenses to contribute to presidential options when a future Cuban Missile Crisis might take place. And as no sooner had Harold Malmgren been given that assignment, he was contacted by a famous CIA officer, Richard Bissell,
number 2 in the CIA, deputy director.
That's right. And Bissell met with Malmgren and told him, he said, "Look, you've been given this assignment to develop missile defense options and to explore the potential for missile defenses to contribute to deterrence. And you need to know that in the test that happened in October 26, 1962, at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was a test of a special warhead designed to produce enhanced X-ray output called the XW51 X1 or something like that. It was amazing. Malmgren, at 89 years old, rattled off the name of that warhead from memory.
Mm-hmm.
That
he's a genius.
He is, and it was. Okay, so taking you back specifically to that event, we set off that warhead. It was the Bluegill triple prime atmospheric test. And it was designed to destroy a dummy reentry vehicle with this sizable warhead using enhanced X-rays. And the X-rays would have caused this chain of events in the target, where you would get this spallation from inside the inside layers of the reentry vehicle, and it would tear apart the reentry vehicle. So this was the third attempt, as I recall, maybe even the fourth, to test this device in the atmosphere, and it was successful. It exploded as planned, and there were 2 RC-135 Cobra Ball airplanes up taking video of this. One, I think, representing Los Alamos, one representing Lawrence Livermore Lab. And they, each of those aircraft, filmed this fireball and what happened to the test RV. And as soon as that fireball erupts, you see this object come tumbling out of the fireball, heading for the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, this video is available. It's open source. And you see, it's really crazy because Lawrence Livermore, you see the object tumbling out, and then Los Alamos, you see a white triangle superimposing the video.
I thought it was the other way around.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
I thought it was Livermore's
was more secret,
that covered up the object.
Interesting.
And it was Los Alamos, and I think the warhead was a Los Alamos design.
Okay.
Anyway, the trivia.
No, that's good correction.
Yeah, so you actually see this object clearly in the Los Alamos video, and what Malmgren reported that he'd been told directly by Bissell is that we downed a UFO that was closely monitoring that test, and it tumbled into the ocean, and that the Navy picked it up. So you mentioned that the video of this test has been declassified and was released. I think it was back in the late 90s, and also released or declassified and released were the ship logs, because in tests like that, and this was out.
So nuts. I wonder if do you think they specifically targeted that craft, or just it was because it was monitoring it?
I think
just
that's
got
what it
knocked
was.
out.
I think it was the UFO was monitoring what was going on.
Holy shit! I can't believe we're exploding nukes in space. I mean, and because there's not so much nuke activities anymore. Maybe that's why there's so much less crashes and retrievals. Or they just learn to stay away from us.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good, because I mean we've discussed it to death on the show, but the aliens or craft, whatever, do always seem to be really interested in our nuclear technology. So much so that apparently they get close enough to it where they'll get blown out of the sky. But yeah, I think that's why. I mean, or they're just better at covering up crashes now. But
yeah, right, yeah. And it just seems like a secret war going on.
Yeah, or something.
Did you see that one on Mars that this guy got? He found that there's a craft on Mars on one of the images.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it's even like there's drag marks, and the craft is right there.
Anomaly is located in this highlighted area there. So the site is roughly at 6 degrees, 27 minutes south, 76 degrees, 57 minutes west. Yeah, we're looking at the actual size, 1:1 scale. We can see the object located right there to the left. It looks like if it is a crashed disk or some type of flying craft, that it came in at a very low angle and hit the surface and left this trench. Check out the shape of the dunes over here, folks, and then the rounded shape of this object. It measures approximately 9 meters in diameter, and the shadow it casts says it is about 2 meters in elevation.
So it's tiny. It's not that big.
9 meters isn't. Yeah. Well, you know what's so cool or so funny, I guess, is these aliens spent all these millions of years and technology learning how to fly and traverse space, but they never developed any technology to land.
That was freaking crash.
That's their problem, is they never developed any landing technology. Clackstar, how do we get to the ground? Oh, I don't know. We'll just stop flying and go down.
I mean, unless someone shot this down on Mars too, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I'm wondering. This is a great sci-fi concept, but I'm wondering if we're like living in like a post-war universe. Like there's been this.
That's why it's empty.
Well, and that's why we're discovering evidence of crashes like this, where there was this huge fight in the solar system, and there's of course still aliens around. Maybe they're monitoring us to make sure we don't get in the same interstellar fight that they were in.
Yeah, I mean, there's evidence Mars was destroyed. A civilization when Mars was destroyed, and that was nuked as well. So, wouldn't surprise. And that was millions of years ago. It's not like it was recent or anything.
Right.
So look at that thing, huh?
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff.
You gotta love these independent researchers.
Mm-hmm. Well, they'll never. Unfortunately, if you're an independent researcher and you come across something like this, you'll never become a professional. They're gonna make sure you don't get a real big platform.
Oh yeah, and you'll never get the grants needed to study this. But that is really bizarre.
Very bizarre.
Look how close he's gone into this. Yeah, definitely something anomalous. Now, is it crashed? You mean you're right? Why are there so many crashes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a war. Remnants of it. You heard about the Egyptian thing, right?
Which one?
Under the Giza.
Yes.
Plateau, the structures.
Again, you need to read those Area 51 books. All of this stuff we're talking about is covered. Every time you're like, you bring up like, hey, like that's in the book. That's in these books.
Okay, cool. But I mean, I'm sure you saw the diagram.
Yes,
2 kilometers, 2 kilometers down. So they finally, Jay from Project Unity got them to do an English interview. So it's very scientific, though. I don't know if we're going to go through it. But they finally answer all the questions that people had about the technology and how, because there's lots of skeptics out there, which is great. We should be skeptical about these.
Yeah, question everything.
Because you're talking about 2-kilometer shafts with coils going around them. I mean, just huge and immense, and like definitely the Egyptians did not do that, or not the ones that were around in those dynasties. So it pushes it farther way back, and the technology is just beyond anything we can imagine, and it's most probably an energy device.
Yeah, I mean that's what Tesla hypothesized that the pyramids were. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that gave him the motivation or the inspiration for the Warcliffe. Is it called Warcliffe Towers?
I know what you're talking about, but I don't think that's what they're called.
So they finally did an English one. If you guys are still skeptical or want to learn more information, go listen to these guys. Yes, they're Italian, so their English is not perfect, but they go into the details of how the technology works, how they were able to detect all of these. Yeah, we can take a quick listen.
Yeah, let's give it a quick listen.
Okay.
You use a ground penetrating radar, which is a radar that is on the soil, on the earth, on the surface of the earth, and you scan like that manually, then you can arrive maybe 15 meters. But that's not the synthetic aperture.
Right.
We are speaking about radars that are located in space, which is another academy. It's completely different with respect to conventional radar. It's different, as I told you before. So, with my technique, that is let's call it modified synthetic aperture radar, Doppler tomography, which is the maximum depthness that we can achieve. Let's say around 5 kilometers, like that. It depends on the Doppler bandwidth that we are synthesizing, okay?
Wow.
About 5 kilometers below. So we have tuned 2 or 3 kilometers, and we found these shafts that that are very visible. And the first time we saw these shafts, me and Corrado told me, Filippo, what are those things? No, Corrado, that's noise. The first day, the first week, the first month. But the second month, we say, Corrado, we have changed the radar, we have changed images, we have changed everything, and always these shafts were completely visible. And so, how you say, by our consciousness, we announce it to everyone with a certain probability that is very high. People, there are the shafts.
So that is just so insane.
Very cool. You mentioned he was Italian, but I was not ready for that level of Italian. My goodness. Could you pull up the video again?
This one?
Yep. Well, the one was this the one you were just playing?
Yeah.
Go back to like right where you ended.
I don't know why it reset. Maybe it ended around.
Oh,
here.
Okay. So wait, right? Okay. That image in the top left.
Yeah.
That one reminds me of like when they build skyscrapers, isn't that what goes at the very bottom?
Yeah, the foundation. Yeah. Yes.
That's what that reminded me of first, not necessarily like a coil, like a Tesla coil. Like
yeah, and if you look at what's his name? I'm blanking now. He talks about the Library of Amente. He's that god Hermes Trismegistus, but he was called something else before. I can't remember now. But in his encounter, we found it. Oh, the Book of Enoch. So Enoch, in the Book of Enoch, he talks about the Library of Amente, which is underneath this pyramid. So could this be that library that's underneath here? I mean, who knows?
It's online saying,
"Whoa," but 2 kilometers below.
Yeah, that's huge.
Look at these things.
200 tomographies, 2 computers, 24 hours, 7 days were processing tomographies. So we have at least 200 tomographies acquired with different, let's say, tomographic lines different images, and different satellite systems. Different everything, same results.
Yeah,
Crazy.
man, you can't. Yeah, these guys did their homework.
I mean, it's good to know. The first hype. They go, oh, it's static, and then he's saying they swapped everything out, and they are still getting the same images.
Yeah, and this really, of course, Zahi Hawass from Egypt is upset, and he goes, "Oh, this is nonsense." He said they didn't have approval. This process doesn't have approval, and the frequencies used don't have approval. What does that have anything to do with it? He's just pissed.
There's clearly some outside influence going on with Egypt, because I don't think it's Egypt that's so protective of the pyramids and stuff like that. I think there's some outside influence that's keeping everyone out and can't explore the pyramids. Like I was just watching a video, I think it was the Y-Files, and they were talking about how they had discovered this big underground cavern underneath.
Yeah,
and there was like, it was going on for long, and then apparently the Egyptian government came in and blocked off, like they put cement and filled in so you couldn't go explore. And it's like, why do that?
Why exactly? Why? I mean, it can't be. Well, Zahi always says he wants to protect their national pride, and that if it comes out that the Egyptians didn't build these pyramids, that'll hurt their national pride. Maybe, I don't know.
But I mean, that's the thing, is like when these were built, Egypt wasn't a thing.
No, but that's not part of the story, because we still think it was the Egyptians in the dynasty. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
But so this will push it even before that. It's another civilization, basically, that the Egyptians came upon these, and that the step pyramids they show, that those were attempts to recreate the pyramids. So it wasn't an evolution of step pyramids first, and then all of a sudden the Great Pyramids are produced. It was the Egyptians trying to reproduce the pyramids. So I just think it's just bananas. I mean, Burj Khalifa is like half of the length, right? I think it's a kilometer, so it's half. So these go down 2 kilometers. These shafts. Who the hell created that?
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, it's clearly not ancient humans, or if it is, it's an ancient human civilization that was wiped off the planet with all their technology.
Yeah, exactly. Like what Graham Hancock talks about, right? That there was a very advanced global human civilization that was destroyed from a cataclysm and reset.
Yeah. You'd think we'd at least find like an ancient iPhone or something, though,
Yeah, they just did it differently. They used the energies around us, right?
I mean, that's true, and that wouldn't leave any mark.
Right, well, and they probably use telepathy as well.
Right. Got a fire going on at your house?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's gone. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a new alien abduction film. Watch the Skies. Swedish. It's a Swedish one.
Nice. When's it come out? Maybe it'll say at the end of the trailer.
Watch the Sky. Oh, here it is. May 9th.
Oh, right around the corner.
Oh wait, no, it was in a Watch the Skies. All right, maybe
it is May 9th.
May 9th is when it was showed for the first time. Oh, perfect.
Nice. May 9th hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, no, because I saw this.
Oh,
this is 2023.
And to my dad. I feel normal.
You mean it's not normal to think your father was kidnapped by aliens?
So you believe in aliens and stuff?
Her dad was the leader of that UFO cult.
Denise.
My farmer saw the same thing my dad was looking for all along. What if something took him?
We have seen her type before.
They had help from a young girl.
It's time to pull the plug on that UFO cult.
I've spent my entire life searching for answers.
And now I'm a bit afraid of what I'll find. We're on to something big here.
This has cost us almost everything.
10 o'clock! If there's one thing you've taught me, Denise, is that to know is one thing, but to believe is completely different.
It's impossible.
Denise! Get a move on!
I'm going to find my dad.
Cool.
Looks good. I'm so glad
Yeah.
that UFOs are so mainstream now that we're getting like these big movies coming out.
You think the aliens watch our movies about them?
I bet no. Well, I bet they've tried and they just don't. Because I can't imagine an alien that's like has seen the stars and all this stuff, and they go like they can't figure out what we're doing because they don't. We've established they don't understand art or emotions,
Right?
So they can't figure out what the hell we're doing.
Oh yeah, good point. But yeah, it looks great. I know Sweden. They listen to our show. They're up there. With
Yeah.
countries that listen to the show. So there's a lot of interest. It's the Nordic countries. Maybe they're aliens.
Well, we've got the Nordics. And we've got the people who live in the
right.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot of UFO activity up there.
Oh yeah, definitely there is. And another movie coming out is S4, the Bob Lazar story.
How many times?
We need another one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how many times does Bob Lazar need to tell his story? Well, he can tell as much as he wants. I guess what I'm getting at: how many times do filmmakers need to go? This story needs to be told again.
Now you know what's so different about this one. In 2013, okay, this documentary film exposes the secrets concealed within a facility the government still refuses to admit exists. With unprecedented access to S4, the groundbreaking film combines Lazar's first-hand testimony, archival footage, cinematic recreations. All right, so it's nothing different than what Corbell did.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't get it. We know Bob Lazar's story. You can go on YouTube and find hours of him just telling his story over and over and over again.
Exactly.
And then there's been documentaries about this too.
I don't even want to watch the
3-minute
trailer.
Not worth it.
Wow, we're at over 2 hours. This is about the moon landing was fake. He was on Danny Jones' podcast. Great interview.
Bart Sibrel.
Yeah, he did. He did the documentary "Funny Thing Happened to the Moon." He's that guy. He's the one who got punched by one of the astronauts.
Right, Buzz Aldrin punched him.
Buzz. Yeah. So in this clip, he talks about how they were caught with footage trying to fake going halfway to the moon when they weren't even that far. So he goes, "That's like a smoking gun right there." He's like, "Why would they have to fake that?
Right.
If they were actually there." So that's coming up a lot.
What's been making the rounds all over the internet again is that video where someone zooms in on the moon and you can see those two giant ships.
Oh, yeah.
We covered that on the show like a year and a half ago, and like I keep seeing it like, wow, I've never seen this before. I'm like, how? This was huge, like a year ago.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised to be seeing that footage coming up again.
Someone's, I think, found a moon for the moon as well.
Yeah, I thought we covered that.
See that one?
We covered that a couple weeks ago, I thought.
So this was cool. DARPA accidentally detects SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket re-entry by listening to Earth's atmosphere.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, if Arrow can get their hands on this, then we'll know exactly what vehicles are coming in and from where.
Exactly.
The phenomenon is highly reputable. We discovered an unplanned new technique for identifying objects entering the Earth's atmosphere. So what they do is they listen to the atmosphere. It's called Atmos Sense.
Gotcha.
Cool stuff.
Very cool.
Especially that it's unplanned.
Yeah.
We discovered an unplanned new technique for identifying objects entering the Earth's atmosphere. There it is. And whatever, how they do it. But now, no excuses.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if what if they're in like some other frequency? If they can,
gotta be right.
You know, like ultraviolet or infrared. I mean, I know they can see solid objects, but what if they shift over to something else?
I imagine they do. That's why they're so hard to like. We don't get to see them during the day.
You sent the conversation starter. This is hilarious.
That was good. This is a good video.
Yo, dude.
Yeah, what's up?
What's up with the photo?
Oh, yeah, it's just like a conversation piece in case we had like people over.
Of the Twin Towers being attacked?
Yeah, that's 9/11. So basically in like 2001.
I know what 9/11 is.
Oh, good. So you're caught up. So basically on 9/11.
Dude, my parents are from New York. What if they see this?
I think they'd have some pretty good insight.
Don't you think it's a little bit fucked up?
Don't you think it's fucked up that the government would ignore multiple warnings of an aviation-related attack on our country?
No, it's just kind of tasteless.
Or that just a year before the attacks, a right-wing think tank consisting of some of Bush's administration conceptualized the idea of a new Pearl Harbor in order to justify increased military presence in the Middle East.
Come on, man. It's just that... Wait, is it actually true? No, what am I thinking, dude? There's 9/11 on the walls. I don't want 9/11 on the walls.
IT guy, hope somebody's naked. Oh, what's up? You guys still need your Wi-Fi fixed?
Yeah, it's been a pain in the ass lately, but
9/11.
Yeah, we were just talking about it.
No, I like it. It brings the whole wall together. Looks really nice.
Appreciate it, man.
No, of course.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. What?
Well, dude, isn't it crazy that the primarily targeted section of the Pentagon was in charge of financial records, and the attack occurred only a day after a meeting was held about irresponsible record keeping? I mean, kind of belongs on the wall.
See, this guy gets it.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. President, they hit the second tower.
This fucking guy. Get the fuck out of here.
It's good seeing you guys. Good seeing you guys.
you
Like
too.
that, you know.
Yeah, of course.
Wait, you forgot to fix the Wi-Fi.
I never forget.
Dude, he was ready with that one.
Was that scripted? Did you pay that guy?
No, it wasn't scripted.
Wait, no, it was. Fuck you.
The Kennedy is.
Oh my god. What's next? Very nice. Not bad.
I'm glad, like the whole 9/11 truth movement. Remember how angry everyone was about that?
Oh my god, dude. They used to get so pissed.
And now it's like totally, it's more than socially okay to ask questions about 9/11.
Yeah, and it's funny because you sent that after. Have we played this before? The Twin Pines Mall and Back to the Future and 9/11, predicting 9/11.
I don't think so.
This is really cool.
Necessary to prevent this terrible disaster.
In the 1985 classic Back to the Future, at a scene called the Twin Pines Mall, we will bear witness to a sudden surprise terrorist attack perpetrated by a group of Muslim terrorists. The attack is at the Twin, which is a reference to the Twin Towers. When we turn the sign upside down, the digits on the clock read 911 or 9/11.
Okay, this is a little much even for me. Mm-hmm. This is a little much even for me.
Representation.
Hey, listen.
Of the Twin Towers. Before the terrorist attack, the twins are present, but after the attack, the twins are gone, replaced with a single pine. This takes place on 9/11, where the twins are destroyed and replaced with a single tower, the One World Trade Building. Also at this scene, Doc shows us two stopwatches, both of which display encoded 9/11s. Is this only a coincidence? The pines are the towers, and this symbol system is confirmed in Back to the Future Part 2, where we see the twin pines appear again on a projection movie screen in Marty's future house. Marty's family gathers around the movie screen, and the twin pines actually morph into the twin towers. This is because the twin pines are the twin towers. The pines are the towers. Pines, towers. And the Twin Pines Mall is the Twin Towers Mall, which is why all the clocks here secretly say 9/11 and why there will be a Muslim terrorist attack resulting in the destruction of the Twin Pines, or the Twin Towers. But the appearance of the towers is not a random backdrop, as we can see the Statue of Liberty lurking just as secretly as the towers, making this scene a secret recreation of New York City, where Marty's family has gathered to stare at Ground Zero. Of these three characters staring at Ground Zero, one of them is completely upside down. But in the entire Back to the Future saga, this is the only time when an upside-down character will ever appear. The hint being given here is to observe the scene from his perspective by turning it upside down. But when doing so, the Twin Towers are clearly shown to be falling down. In the entire history of cinema, this scene of Back to the Future is the most literal depiction ever made showing the Twin Towers falling down. So how is it possible that this scene would occur in a story that already contains a terrorist attack by Muslims at the Twins on 9/11, where the Twins are the Twin Towers, which then execute Hollywood's best depiction of the Twin Towers collapse? But Back to the Future doesn't just portray this attack, it develops into an elaborate warning about it.
Just go back early and warn him. I have to tell you about the future! Doc, about the future. Who will be shot by terrorists.
But Marty is carrying more essential information about the future. He knows the exact time and date that a tower will be struck.
Save the clock tower! Save the clock tower! Don't forget to take a flyer. Save the clock tower!
In a story we already suspect of being a 9/11 warning, how is it possible that this phrase appears on a flyer telling the future? Then, when the tower strike takes place, a giant flaming 9/11 is ignited in the street. Marty knows exactly when and where this tower strike will happen because it's all written on this flyer and placed in his hands, but something lurks in the background overseeing this transaction. But why does this symbol hover while Marty is forewarned about the tower strike? Back to the Future was written and directed by Robert Zemeckis, first released in 1985, but to depict the future, Zemeckis chose October 2015.
All right, Doc, what's going on, huh? Where are we? When are we? October 21st, 2015. 2015?
The Twin Towers scene takes place in October 2015, and the towers appear on a movie screen, meaning the McFly family is watching a secretly placed Twin Towers movie released on October 2015, directed by Robert Zemeckis. So how could it be that now, in the real October 2015, a major Hollywood production is about to hit theaters worldwide, and it is exclusively about the Twin Towers? It happens to be directed by Robert Zemeckis. The title of this new Twin Towers film is The Walk, and this new Twin Towers film has the exact same release date as the secret Twin Towers film planted in Back to the Future, which exposes the symbolism of the pines and depicts the Twin Towers collapse. So why?
All righty.
I don't. Okay, what do you think is more likely? Robert Zemeckis was given information that the Twin Towers would fall on September 11th, 2001, and given millions of dollars to make this propaganda film, or do you think they made a blockbuster and just made a bunch of money that features a key staple of our, country back then?
Right. Well, there's a lot of predictive programming with 9/11, so I think there's a bit of a stretch what they did, But
well, when you start flipping stuff upside down and I don't know, I think this is a little bit of a too much for me. That's why I said that at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, there was I can't, I'm not going to dismiss it out because there's just too much. The clocks, that burning with the 9/11 on there, And Zemeckis having that movie in October 2015, that's really bizarre by itself.
Is it?
Yeah, exactly matching the October 2015 of where they're going in the future and then linking it to 9/11. I mean, not really. That's a crazy coincidence.
Yeah. Okay.
That's just a crazy coincidence. Now, is he? Now there's a lot, and there's so much other predictive program when it comes to 9/11. Years before, in Simpsons and so many other cartoons. The Matrix has 9/11 on his passport. What's the other one? Is huge. There's a lot of. I think we've played those scenes too. Like how many movies actually predicted 9/11. Fight Club as well. With the final scene. And that's all called predictive programming. So when it does happen, people are not shocked or surprised. Also, terrorists flying into the towers as well. That was on an episode. There was an X-Files spin-off.
But can't you do that with anything? If the White House, I mean, like listen to this. If the White House burned down tomorrow, would we be seeing the same kind of analysis about Independence Day? Be like,
I guess
Independence Day, the White House exploded, and therefore it predicted the White House burning down. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, I would ask people to do a similar exercise to other things.
I mean, the Twin Towers.
See if that comes up.
The Twin Towers were in like every movie from the 80s and 90s.
Oh yeah,
they were in every movie because it's part of the cultural landmark of the United States. I mean, you can, I don't know.
But always predicting them blowing up and falling down.
Not always, but it doesn't predict them blowing up or falling down here. It's just a slideshow.
No, I know, but I'm saying the other
you have to watch it
programming
upside down.
Shows. Right.
I'm just saying you could do this with anything. You could take any major event. If some big icon was blown up by terrorists, there is some form of media where you could say, look, this predicted that happening.
Yeah, maybe if you choose one, but I'm saying like there are multiple movies and episodes predicting 9/11.
But I'm saying you could do. I'm saying if something major like 9/11 happened today, there's enough movies, media, books, whatever, where you could pull all that information and go, look, it was.
If it's a major event, pulled off by the intelligence agency, because they use predictive programming to put into movies and TV shows.
But
it's a known tactic.
My argument is I don't think it's predictive programming. I think it's people who, when something major happens, you can look back in the past and go, well, look at all this, look at all the stuff that happened before, like look at all the stuff in media that happened that predicted this, where I just think it's a coincidence, especially with something like the Twin Towers. Like I said, it was a major part of our American image. And so that's why it was in everything.
I know, but they're not saying like just showing images of the towers and what I'm talking about. It's actually them falling down and being blown up and people crashing into them and then saying, oh, we never thought of that, when it was in the culture, deeply in there. And that's just this event. So I guess a good exercise to prove your point is to go back and look at other things with other events.
But you can't do that with any other event. What other major terrorist attack has blown up an American landmark?
Not that specifically, but take like JFK, for example. Maybe we can go back and see if there's anything like that, or the Unabomber, if anything like that was going on. You'd have to take events that really captured the nation. Waco, maybe, for example, as well. So to test that, you'd have to look at other big events that have happened. And we've had plenty. COVID was in predictive programming as well. Even like months or years before, like the exact same thing that what happened with COVID. I think on Netflix there was a movie or a couple movies.
Well, but again, see, that's another thing where there's been a ton of movies about plague outbreaks or illness outbreaks. That's just it's something we have in our culture. You can't look at COVID and go, well, look at all these movies we're predicting it. Like, no, it's just we have movies about people getting sick. It's been like that forever. I don't think it points to it being predictive programming. Anyway, it's a semantic argument.
Right. All right, some funny stuff.
You can let us know in the comments.
All right, we have a couple more things and we can close off. This one's funny. Promises made, promises kept.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
Jeff Bezos came, Bill Gates came, Mark Zuckerberg came. Many of them came numerous times. The bankers have all come. Everybody's coming.
Oh, Trump is so funny.
Ugh, so good. That's such a great mashup of all that stuff. Oh, I love
Yeah.
this so much.
Yeah, this cracked me up.
This is Major Tom to ground control.
This is ground control.
I'm stepping through the door.
Did you just say you're stepping through the door?
And I'm floating in the most peculiar way.
No, that's a negative. Stay in the spacecraft.
And the stars look very different today.
Hello. God damn it.
Oh, dude.
That's Ryan George on YouTube. Funny guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't follow him.
He does like a lot of like funny movie reviews and stuff like that. It's hard to explain.
Nice.
Funny guy though.
Well, cool. That's what we have for today. I think Betty and Barney Hill was a real event.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And such a fun story to read about and to cover on the show. I'm really glad we did it.
And they're cool people. You know, you definitely see that they're genuine. They weren't out to gain notoriety. They didn't want people to even know they're in an interracial marriage. So why bring attention to yourselves?
Yeah, and there's nothing that can be used really to discredit that story, you know?
Yeah.
People can say, oh, they were stressed because of the interracial thing, or they had seen the Outer Limits a couple weeks before. But none of that disproves anything. Do we even cover on that article that the U.S. base had seen something on their radar?
Yes, yeah. She said it. Well, she said it in the interview when she was being interviewed.
Yeah, it wasn't in the article.
Yeah, she said that the base saw on their radar at 2 a.m. in the morning, which is basically when they got dropped off. But yeah, and the star map.
Star map's a big one.
The experiments, the testing.
Yeah, just listening to those regression tapes. Ooh, man, I was getting chills.
And the telepathy.
Yeah, thought transference.
Thought transference. And just how the UFO looked, how the beings looked. I mean, I still don't get a picture of what they said they looked. I guess they said grayish skin.
Yeah, it's in the article, it's gray skin, dark eyes. Yeah, but I didn't get a clear indication of, because I might still kind of be right, because I could have sworn in one of the interviews or podcasts or whatever I was listening to, they were saying they looked almost human, enough to be like really weird to know that they're not human. Like,
yeah, he said that too, right? He said they're just small when he was talking in that one interview. He said they were small men.
But the biggest mystery of the whole thing is what happened to that damn dog.
Oh yeah, and no one ever brings it up, and they don't bring it up either.
Yeah,
they got home with it though. All right, as we see in the pictures.
Yeah.
So maybe
they get home and the dog's got green skin. I am definitely your dog, Delzy.
He starts talking to them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I am your dog. Anyway, yeah, really fun. We got to cover some of the stuff that's been happening this past week. Yeah.
The JFK files. I mean, that,
I thought that was going to be a bigger deal because I know that just got released, a few weeks ago now?
Yeah.
And didn't seem like anything too new came out of it. But people,
they got rid of all the redactions for Israel. That was the big one. There was because there were documents before that were released, and all the redactions they have were about Israel and Israeli secret service or military intelligence service, something. So that was and the whole Jesus Angleton with his office.
I think a lot of people were expecting like a handwritten letter from LBJ, so someone in Israel saying, "Go ahead and take the shot, kill that sucker."
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No.
Yeah. But now I guess next we have RFK coming out, or is it MLK? Then 9/11 is supposed to come out, those papers.
Yeah, we'll see.
And where are the UFOs and UAP? That's been all they did was make up excuses for New Jersey. That was FAA lights, and that's it. We haven't heard anything since.
We kind of thought that was going to be the case. I remember us talking about it before Trump got elected.
Yeah.
I know he ran. That was like one of his big things. Day one, UAP files. Of course, they
Yep.
stall, and then they come out and say, "Ah, it's nothing."
Yep, exactly. And well, there's a lot of things people are pissed that he's now not the war president. I mean, sorry, the peace president. He's the war president.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like we're gearing up to invade Iran, right? Isn't that the next big thing?
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It looks like, yeah, because he's setting the chess pieces. 300,000 troops. I read this morning something, dude. So that's it. We're going to war,
and no one's gonna stop Israel from completely flattening, completely genociding the Palestinians.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. No one's saying anything. Yeah, but they are. What they're doing is they want to throw us in jail for talking about it. That's what Trump's doing and his administration. You know, what happened to these people talking about the woke left censoring all of a sudden because it's about Israel, we're going to censor too.
Well, it just goes to show who's in charge.
Yeah.
That's what's that famous saying, like, to know who's in charge, just know who you can't criticize.
I think Voltaire said that, something like that.
Yeah. I did see really quick that, remember there was that Israel, they killed the aid workers and
the 15 aid workers and journalists.
Yeah, just unbelievable, man.
Yeah, and they targeted one by one.
Yep. And they just get away with it.
But it's just, what happens to these people when they get in there? They just see the power and that's it. They just cave.
They bring Epstein out from the back room and he drops a videotape on the table and says, "This is you with a 14-year-old boy. Now you can either do what we say, or we're leak, quote unquote, leak this to the public."
It's so frustrating, man. Like, why even vote? Like, the only country that wins is Israel.
Hey,
it doesn't matter who gets in.
And listen, if you want to be a politician, stop having sex with kids. Fucking disgusting perverts.
Yeah, and it seems like all the hires, they're not qualified. The only qualification they need is to be a Zionist.
Yeah,
that's the qualification.
That meme the meme I sent you, like, why are they all wearing the hat and kissing the wall?
Yeah, that's right. It was you sent the video too. Yeah.
I had to send you the direct video because I saw that on Reddit and I was like, oh, that's not staying up. And so I immediately downloaded the video and sent it to you.
Oh, yeah, because that's true. Whoever runs for president's got to go to the wall and give homage to it.
Got to put on the hat and kiss the wall. So this has been episode 113 of the Uncovering Anomalies podcast. That is Adam, and he's going to tell us everything we need to know about how to find us.
Well, if you're watching this video or listening to us, it looks like you already found us. But in case, you can find us on all podcasting platforms and most video platforms, especially the ones that will not censor us when YouTube does. But definitely go visit us on YouTube. Follow us there. Share us with your friends. Share us on your social media. But we're on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey. And we're also on X. We haven't opened any other social media sites like Facebook or anything, but we're on X.
We're not getting on Blue Sky?
No, we're not.
Oh, no.
We're at UAP the podcast. I'm at Breakaway Civil, and Topher is at Topher at all. So go on X, follow us, hit us up, let us know how we're doing.
Please
we really
do.
Appreciate your feedback.
We absolutely appreciate your feedback. Every comment we get, we read.
Yes, no matter how hurtful. Try us. Our skin is thick.
Yeah, so Mom, quit leaving mean comments. Just tell me in person or on the phone.
I saw that. So she's saying that wasn't a true story that you said.
The one where she woke me up at the crack of dawn with a double text?
Yeah, yes, that one.
I know. I saw the comment on Spotify.
Spotify, yeah.
It was mostly true.
All right. That's what counts, mostly true.
So yeah, it was. I definitely was woken up by a double text. It was a little bit later in the day than I might have stated on the show.
So it's mostly true.
Like I said, mostly true.
Yeah. Yes. So we have a support link under each episode. So if you can, it'll be very nice to show your support for the show, and it'll help us out, and it'll keep ads out of the show. Unless you guys like ads, we can start doing them.
Yeah, I'd love to just middle of the show, like we're gonna play the tapes from the Betty and Barney Hill, the hypnotic regression therapy
after
tapes.
this.
But first,
so who would you allow on the
what?
Who would you allow on the podcast to do ads? Would it be anyone, or would you?
Okay, so actually, I meant to talk to you about this earlier. Everyone can get sponsored by NordVPN. Like NordVPN will sponsor anybody. I think we could get some NordVPN money.
Just to do some skits.
Oh yeah. You can pretty much, and from what I can tell with Nord, you can just do whatever. Like as long as you put it on the show, they're fine with it.
You're kidding.
I've seen some shows where they like make a whole joke about it. And they're fine with it. They're totally fine with it.
Oh, all right. Send me over the details.
Well, I don't have any details. I don't know how to get sponsored by anybody.
Oh, okay. I'll look it up.
I always thought it was kind of one of those things where you get big enough and companies come to you. But
it might be an affiliate too. It makes it easier.
Well, that's going to do it for all of us here at the Uncovering Anomalies podcast. We want to thank you all so much for listening. And I guess that's it. We'll see you all next week.
See you next week.